are felt beyond words. From Cabo to wine country, no one connects you to the Pacific Coast like Princess. Princess Cruises. Book now.
Home of the 12-hour race of Sebring this weekend will prove to be pivotal in the second round of the Porsche Club of America Sim Racing Team Racing Series. The cars aren't real, but the racing surely is. My name's Shakespeare, bringing you all of today's coverage here from this wonderful racetrack here in the south of Florida. Jeremy Scott is here along with me for today's action. And Jeremy, when we come to racing action at Sebring, this is one of the few circuits that you see around the world that have almost a whole month dedicated to them. If January is Daytona month, if February is Bathurst month, then March, you get to March, and suddenly it's Sebring season.
Yeah, we just came off last week the Porsche Sprint Challenge North America and the all-new Airbnb Endurance Challenge out of IMSA here at Sebring. Next week, it's the famous 12 Hours of Sebring, and I absolutely love March in the central of Florida. It's not too hot, not too cold, except for a couple of years ago when it was just super brutal hot during the 12-hour. But, you know, this is absolutely a fantastic racetrack, and I can't wait to see what happens.
5 races over the course of the year here in the Porsche Club of America. We started at Daytona Road on the 4th of January. We then moved over today to Sebring. We'll have Watkins Glen in June. Road America will come along in July, and we'll finish on September 20th over at Road Atlanta. So it'll be a bullring finish for what will be a wonderful American-based championship with the iconic tracks that are available to all of these drivers and teams. Now, let's go talk format here for the moment, Jeremy, because as they sit, practice has started at midday Eastern or 8 a.m. Pacific. We're already into qualifying at the moment where they've got 10 minutes or 3 laps to set their time. Warm-up will come along 10 minutes later, and then a race start for 3 hours will go at 12:45 Eastern.
And for some drivers, it's just hurry up and wait. Of course, we're watching 4 different classes. Both of the 963 and the 911 GT3R. Your pro class will be in blue, club in like a yellowish orange, sport in the lime green, and challenge in the red. Of course, you know, we did have the race last time out. Let's take a look at what happened at Daytona. Your pro leader right now, Cat 5 Racing GTP. A couple of contenders in the club 963, as you see them right there. You got Sport with Backmarker Motorsports leading, and in challenge, it's Last 10th Lovebirds.
Yeah, they are all there in control with their various categories they've got available. A little bit more of a challenge in the GT3s. In Pro, Solpec Precision Racing lead Imperial Motorsports and Scuderia Chicken House PCA. In Club, Stallions RR find themselves ahead of Gone Broke Racing and Cat 5 Racing GT3. Motorsports lead in the sport category ahead of Mark Schnell Schwei and Chroma Motorsport White, while the only challenge car in category at the moment is Chroma Motorsports Black, who took the honors then with 385 championship points. So let's head ourselves down then to qualifying and to a fairly hot Sebring out there, 36 degrees track temperature here today. So a little bit more on the warmer side in terms of your dog walking to egg frying ratio. We're starting to get a bit on the egg fry at this moment as we got clear skies rushing on around. And here's something critical that we haven't really talked about. Look at the timing of the clock. They're going to have a 4 times acceleration here of the weather as Rob Neville is currently out there trying to get that Porsche 963 to set its initial time out there on the board. Now, weather acceleration has been in iRacing for a very long time, but one thing that will be noted out there is what happens if the weather is to change out there as they go through. Normally, you only get about an hour and a half's notice, Jeremy, for the weather. When you get an accelerated session, like this one is 4 times, that is put out 4 times as fast. So instead of knowing what's going on every 15 minutes, you have a much wider window of what's going to go on with the weather every hour.
You really do. It kind of gives you a chance to really get up there and get that race strategy up and running. You see Chris Pies on the track right now, working around turn number 3. As timing just popping up right now as the drivers making their first laps of the qualifying session. Not much time left to go, just maybe two laps, especially if you're running in the GT3R. But you see right there, Kieran Racing, your fastest overall, the 49.302. Solpec, no surprise here to see them up at the top of the charts. There's Chris Braun in the 0.13, last 10th GT3R.
Yeah, so this is the last 10th New England team out there representing the northeast out there of the United States. I had to double check myself there. As Chris Braun works through at turn 5 and now through the Gurney Bend here at turn 6 and over towards the Hotel Hairpin. Turn number 7 out on track. One of the key places today where you're expecting to see overtaking hold its place. So on the brakes, into the hairpin, get the drive out of the exit, and now you're looking for the run through the Fangio S's here, and then you head your way over to Cunningham Corner, which can be one of the most underrated places to see a move.
Yeah, Cunningham is an absolutely fantastic place to see a move as you work your way around Collier right here. And of course, this is also the pit road for testing for the NTT IndyCar Series and other various series. This is what's fantastic about Sebring. It's not just a sports car facility. It's a facility for almost anything because of its central location, except during hurricane season. Not many people want to go there. Of course, if you want to feel what it's like on the surface of the sun, you go to Central Florida.
You absolutely do, especially when you move into March, April, May, that time. Of course, it's always going to be a semblance of warmth as Cat 5 Racing GTP go to the top of all GTPs with a 148.9 on the board. Braun now along here, the Ullman Straight, leading to the corner of 1,004 racing line, Sunset Bend. Some like to take this more outer to in ratio, but some also love to hug on the inside. That's going to be an invalidated lap because he's tagged the wall not once but twice there coming out of the final section. So that 159.4 is not going to count. Fortunately, there is 2 minutes and 50 seconds remaining on the clock, so there should be enough to go and get some push. David Mendonca then currently piloting around the 919, which leads the category. David, a very dab hand in anything that he sets his mind to, and currently a 1/10 of a second clear of Matrix Black and Shea McNeely. And we saw last season, Jeremy, how good Shea McNeely could be.
Yeah, Shea McNeely's really been coming onto his own over the past couple of seasons, and it'll be interesting to see how he handles the pressure here. You see Mendonca making his way out of Le Mans down the Ullman Straight. Now, here's what's new this year also with the Ullman Straight. There's a walking pedestrian bridge to go from the outside of the track all the way into the paddock, I should say, as that has now been added into iRacing in the new update. So a lot of fans will be able to try that out next weekend at the 12 Hours of Sebring. Mendonca coming off the final corner, Sunset Bend, down the straightaway. What can he do? 58.672. That's good enough for tops. And of course, he makes that 50. Basically extends his speed there in the GT3R. Now we look at Matrix Silver. Justin Tipton comes across the line, 59.236. Good enough for third in class as drivers getting their final chances in qualifying for today's 3-hour race.
Samantha Tan Racing Esports then are going to make their progress. This is Tyler Campbell, who is behind the wheel. It's a team that has a lot of history to it in the world of Twitch out there. Of course, there are some big Twitch streamers who have jumped in with them as Backmarker Motorsports go third in GTP, and Tyler Campbell crossing the line then remains in 6th position. So not much of a change then we're going to see there. There is Gone Broke Racing TRS Am and Peter Kuma, who is in the 05 out there at this moment. But with where they are out on circuit, right now there is only one final car that will be able to set a time. That'll be Jeremy Main out there in Sport Pro for Roadrunner Hurricane out there. So at least at the sorry, just for sport, Jeremy Main will come across like, what a lovely plaid livery that is then heading over to the line. A 201.3 that puts them then up to 24th overall in the 959. So very good job by them. Beautiful livery there, Jeremy.
Absolutely gorgeous. Always love when somebody puts in a nice little plaid livery, as you see Edward Trippett and the Max Schneiel Zwei. I love that German name there in the 420. 21st fastest right now, running the Brandt paint scheme as checker flag is out on this session.
And with that, it means that qualifying is in the books. So we can now understand exactly where the field is going to stand itself up then for racing action here at Sebring, and it will critically be Cat 5 Racing GTP who will hold the control on a 148.8, and they will be very happy with it. Let's take then the moment to get a look at what Cat 5 Racing GTP in the 987 was able to do here around this Sebring International Raceway, as we will take a look at their pole lap to see just where the pace was found and where it was not out there. Jeremy, a critical time then for these drivers as we now set up with this flying lap, going through then along the concrete towards turn number 1 on this old World War II airfield base. This long turn 1, you're just trying to get as close to the wall to hug as possible. Careful on the exits, easy to understeer out wide. Small kink left right of turn 2 into 3, 4 and 5. The first real challenge of the braking zone. You switch back over to asphalt then, as through 5, you now get a chance to put the power down.
Yeah, exactly. Of course, this is very vital because you have a long run through Big Bend, and that sets you up for the hairpin. Arguably one of the toughest areas to not only brake, but stay on the track here, because you've got this right, and then that sets you up immediately for the left. You got to stay off the grass there, and then off to the right, what little grass there is. Through Fangio is coming off of turn 8 and into 9, sets up for Cunningham. It's a fantastic passing opportunity for those looking to see if they can at least get ahead and make the run off of Tower. But you're going through Collier first in turn number 11. 12 is a little right-handed kick, which sets up for Tower turn. Turn number 13. This is where the high-speed 963s will shine. Coming off of 13, because basically you're going to be full throttle the whole way down into Bishop Bend right here in turn number 14. And then 15, you got to let off just a little bit, but you really got to set yourself up for turn number 16. As you see these little S's, there's 15 and 16. Go off the line just a little bit, back onto the right for Lamar for the long run down the Ullman Straight. And Jake, we're used to seeing the WEC pits on the right. Those have been taken out in this new refresh of Sebring, but as we said, it's added is the new spectator bridge over the back straightaway. On to Sunset Bend as you're bouncing, trying to keep it as tight as you can. You're going to apex right under the right Mission logo, and then set yourself up right on the little ramp there down the front straightaway for a lap around Sebring. There's your pole lap at 48.858.
Yep, and just enough to take that pole position by 900ths of a second in the Porsche 963 category, and a really good lap as well, as we set ourselves then through in warm-up at the moment, which they have about 2 minutes left of that. But we do have a field that is set now here for racing action at Sebring. They will be getting themselves ready for what makes this race tick. And they'll know as well here that on a 4X rotation, which is normally when you sit down and look at it here, 3 hours worth of racing, they're going to get a full Sebring 12 hours in 3 hours. I think that's a bargain.
That's an absolute bargain, because you don't have to sit around in front of a computer for 12 hours, and we don't have to talk about a full 12-hour race. That's absolutely fantastic. So we're going to see the changing of the guard all throughout the what would be a normal once around the clock, and that's what's going to make things a lot of fun. You see right now drivers making their way through Cunningham and all around into turn number 12. But yeah, this is going to be a blast, especially with the 4X. You don't normally see that much of speed in terms of the timing.
Let's take a look at this grid. Ryan LeMay then for Cat 5 Racing GTP is going to have control of the field, with Kynaran Racing then alongside on that front row. Chris Costis will be there for Backmarker Motorsports in third, with Rob Neville for Last 10th Purple in fourth position. You then have for Mark Schnell Eins there, the first team in sport, Johan Nye, with Lisa Eskridge. Then she'll be there for Last 10th Green out there in that sixth position, looking to get that work. Over in GT3R category, it is Solpec Precision Racing who have control ahead of Shay McNeely, with Justin Tipton at Matrix Silver, making it a Matrix 2-3. It's an Imperial 4-5 with Ed Eisenring Elsenring, in fourth position, as Chris Pies will be in fifth place. Tyler Campbell, therefore Samantha Tan Esports Racing, will be sixth, with Nikki Chan at Last 10th Racing seventh, and then the first of the non-pros, Jake Jabino, there for R-Speed Black, there in the 8th position. You then got Derek Dirksen, 9th for Last 10th Great White, and Adam Gerling there for Chroma Motorsport, rounding out the top 10. Tom Bryce is there for Last 10th GTP, and then Gone Broke Racing TRS Am with Peter Kuma in 12th. Ed Additionran then are in 13th through Devin Hopkins, and Jeremy Hall for Stallions GT3 Triple R, and then over is the number 7 of Stallions Double R, Anthony Carbone Jr., along with Anthony James at Missile Motors. Then you got Sheldon Zaharachuk for Motorsports and the Roadrunner Hurricane team, which we saw Jeremy Main with the beautiful plaid livery. They've just changed over to David Langston for the start. Alder Creek Performance Racing have Leon Snyman there. Randy Teague is in for Chroma Motorsports Black, as the final row will have Mark Snell-Zwei there with Edward Trippett and James Huth for Last 10th New England. George Janellis will jump in to start the race for Chroma Motorsport Black. We start the racing action at 11 a.m., which means we will finish the racing action at 11 p.m. then, as we will get ourselves set for action, or just beyond that 11, around, I would say, 11:15, we might be looking for, as they will set off for a full pace lap, and they will split the class as they go through. A missed start it will be for Chroma Motorsports Black, so they will have to take the start of this race from pit lane. Not necessarily a bad idea. 28 cars are out here today and are going to be racing, but critically, in terms of what today is going to represent for these drivers, it is the fastest of prototypes out there in the Porsche 963s, and then GT3Rs, which are out there, which can absolutely turn their own cadence. But in terms of it, it is as standard can get. The only thing missing is what you would see from a traditional endurance race, is that middle category of a prototype, like an LMP2, for example, or an LMP3. That's not quite there, but those Porsche GT3Rs very much sit down and say they make their own roar around a circuit like this, and it is going to be a very aggressive start to this race, in my view here, Jeremy.
Well, Jake, you know what that means? That means less mayhem and calamity that we normally see from the 2s and the 3s. So that's kind of a good thing. However, we've got a massive field of GT3Rs here, so lots of great talent. And of course, you know, I would say quality over quantity for the 963s. We've got some very fast drivers, very fast teams that were working their way around. So I'm excited to see how this race plays out. Of course, now with so many GT3Rs, it'll be interesting to see how their race plays out with the strategy, because remember, they're going to run a little bit longer on fuel stints than the 963s. But the speed of the 963s here at Sebring, it's just going to be night and day.
It will do, and I think you can only get an understanding of what were the time differences in qualifying. It was 10 seconds a lap, the difference. So look at how sharp the drop-off is on some of the curbs out here at Sebring. I think that gives you a really good understanding now of iRacing's new curb updates that they've done. It's not fully flat out there, and it's almost like you have a sawtooth ridge on some of the curbs, especially there through Fangio over towards Cunningham Corner, watching then with the likes of the GT3R field.
Yeah, indeed. So it's going to be interesting to see. And of course, the Porsche basically was built to run around Sebring at full speed. So you're going to see a lot of handling that you normally wouldn't see with any of the other manufacturers, but it's going to be great for a lot of the drivers. Saw some fast teams up near the front and some that are near the back. You know, you got Anthony Carbone Jr., that Carbone family, they're learning the sports car thing quite well. So let's figure out what happens here as the 963s make their way down the Ullman Straight for the final time at pace car speed.
A wonderful car out there that does so much amazing action. In the 40 races that we've seen the Porsche 963s take, they have won in every 4 in endurance spec. 10 wins, 27 podiums, 7 pole positions, and 2 fastest laps. So that is how quick this car is, which first inaugurated itself into the racing sphere back in 2023, hosting itself and starting at the legendary Goodwood Festival of Speed. And well, right now it is going to be all about that pace, as we get ourselves ready for action then here, as 3 hours will get itself then in the hands of Ryan LeMay and Cat 5 Racing GTP. They will get the launch, and we are underway at the drop of the green flag. Racing action begins in both categories, and critically, they will stagger and go. Shane McNeely with the inside at Sunset Bend down on the bottom of your screen, trying to find the line on David Mendonca for position, as they will now drive onto the main straight. A clean start at the front of your 963 division, as LeMay leading out Charlie Boyer and Chris Costis there from back marker.
How odd to see start on the backstretch for the GT3s. Either way, so far, everybody making it through turn 1. You see single file already for the 963s as they work their way into the hairpin. But the GT3s not doing too bad either. A couple cars going to the inside, trying to make some sort of pass happen, and indeed they're not going to do that, but slowly snake their way out of 3 into 4 and then through 5 and down through Big Bend for the first time at speed in this 3-hour adventure through Central Florida. Here's going to be the big test. How many cars can make it out of hairpin without going off track? So far, so good for a lot of these drivers. They go 2-3 wide into the entry, but I don't see any dust to my left-hand side. And indeed, looking out of the back, they are taking this absolutely fantastic. And once again, you see all these GT3Rs closed in together. Solpec Precision Racing, though, leading over both of the matrices, black and silver, as we're working our first lap at speed here in this 3-hour race.
Yep, David Mendonca happy then on the short shoot run over to the tower corner, named, of course, after the fact that the control tower used to be there to make sure that all the planes could fly off effectively. Now along the Flying Fortress Straight, in through Bishop's Bend, and then here the Le Mans Chicane and Jean de Bienne corners now starting to make themselves known out there on circuit. A look then at car number 55. This is Matrix Black out there, which is looking to try and set itself up then in pro to give Solpec a challenge. And already we're seeing cars moving over to the right-hand side of circuit, left side of screen on the defense. It's Tyler Campbell and Samantha Tan on defense here, because Chris Pais here for Imperial Motorsports loses out the place. So that's how quickly you can see a place won to a place lost. But the good news is you can duel it back on the main straight here, slightly shorter, but you do have the opportunity to cross the move to go gather it back into turn 1.
Yeah, plenty of opportunity here in the first couple of corners to really make something happen if you don't make it happen coming off of Sunset Bend. But you see this group is starting to get fractured just a little bit, as David Mendonca taking a 3-car train away from the rest of the field. Then you've got Tyler Campbell in that next train. So we're starting to see these groups really work themselves out. Ed Isingring trying to find out if he wants to be in the group in front or the group in the back, as Pies looks to the inside of Campbell. Not going to make it happen here, heading into the hairpin once again, as everybody full throttle, not too far away from there. You've got Nicky Chan. That's a driver really to watch out for, especially in that last 10th racing. He's 7th in class right now, but heading into Cunningham for the second time. Really, we've been looking pretty good. We haven't checked up on our GTP class, but you see there's the battle for the lead. Ryan LeMay holding off Charlie Boyer for the lead half a second. They've gotten away from Chris Costas and Rob Neville to kind of race a little bit harder.
I think this is the battle down at the back of the pack, though, at the moment, between Lisa Eskridge then over at last 10th green and Mark Snell-Ines, which is there for the 141's Johan Nye behind the wheel. They're now running into Sunset Bend. Very shallow lines being taken then by both of them. And it's a lot bumpier at Sunset Bend when you're on the inside of the circuit. That's why cars tend to migrate out to the middle of the circuit, because although it's taking more time out as you're making the drive through, what you'll find though is because there is less oscillation, you've got more ability to keep the foot planted down to the floor, and you're going to be happy as you go through. I was listening, of course, to some of the IndyCar coverage over at Dalton Arlington, and it's pretty much the same philosophy there at Sunset Bend. This track will be bumpy in places so much that you've got to put extra effort to put your foot down to the floor. Otherwise, you'll find that a bump can knock your foot off of the throttle and you won't be going at full speed.
You know, I was talking to somebody who runs in the Indy Next Championship, and I asked him flat out, because I was watching Alexander Rossi's onboard lap, and I saw how bumpy that surface was. I go, well, what's it like? And he said, bucking Broncos. And that's basically what you could say about here in Florida, because, you know, especially from, we'll call it turn 15 all the way over to outside past turn 1, you are on an old concrete strip. And of course, it's weathered. It hasn't been touched since they put the air base in right before World War II. So you're going to have those bumps, and it's just going to happen. Same with in Texas. And either way, these drivers, they're on the limit. They've got to find out how they can keep their car going faster while still mastering the bumps. And something that I keep saying, I wish iRacing would do this. If you take the track walk, there's a little blue dot that's going to be on the concrete bridge over turn 17. And that's where drivers are told, hey, you need to set yourself up for here in order to get a smooth lap. I wish that in the next update for this track, that iRacing would do that, because I think that would help a lot of drivers here, you know, master that turn 17 without running into the bump. They have it on Le Mans Ultimate, but just not here yet.
Well, I'd be also very intrigued, actually, as we go back into your GT3R category here. This is with Chris Paes here in 6th position for Imperial Motorsport, trying to eye a pass on Tyler Campbell at Samantha Tan Racing Esports. And this is going to be with a little bit of help then from Imperial Motorsports, Kingfisher just in front, to giving the tow here right now through Ed Elshonring, who is going to be in that position. Oh, that's close to the wall from Tyler Campbell, and that could be troublesome. But I am interested to know, if this is the concrete that they laid in back in the, World War II, and they're going, well, how do they maintain and keep this concrete working to a level that everyone else knows about? Or is this going to be a circuit that's just going to get more and more rutted every single year?
Yes. Honestly, that's a good question. You know, I don't know the whole scenario behind it, but either way, they're more likely to fix this part of the circuit than they are the concrete, because that's why you come there. You know, you hear of teams coming over to the States, and if they're racing, you know, at COTA or whatever, they come here to test for, you know, the big 24-hour races to make sure that their equipment is gonna last. I remember the first time I heard that was watching Truth in 24, where Audi would say, okay, we're gonna run the 12-hour race because it's basically a simulation of the Le Mans 24. And you also heard, you know, later on, Audi would do 48-hour tests here to make sure that their prototypes would run without issues for 48 hours straight, which, you know, equates to what, 96 hours? So, math off the top of my head, I can't believe I did that. Charlie Boyer down there in P2 trying to chase down Ryan LeMay as they work through yet another lap. Haven't caught up yet to traffic. Take a look at the track map real quick. And I would give it another couple laps before they start to catch up to the back of the GT3R traffic. And when they do, that's when racing's going to get real fun.
Yeah, they're a minute 19 last time over the line. Randy Teague is at the back for Chroma Motorsports Black going through Tower Corner. Ryan LeMay, by comparison, is running through the Fangio S's at the moment through towards Cunningham Corner. So that's going to give you an understanding of where they are, about a few laps away from starting to encroach on various vehicles out there on circuit. It's bright sunny skies, we're expecting it. Solpeck in control, and the gap currently over the line at 0.8 of a second to a second in towards turn number 1. So this is a comfortable start out there in this race for David Mendonca here at Solpec Precision Racing. This is a team that should be expecting to win out there in American-based racing series. They've got some wonderful drivers then that represent the nationality of the United States. They've even got a former eNASCAR driver in Blake Reynolds in their mix, such is the level of talent that they sit down and they have available to them. But we know that Matrix here have been the team to beat in the Porsche Club of America. And so this is a series out there that you turn around and look at and go, well, if you are going to go and win, you have to survive the Matrix.
Yeah, you really do. But then again, Solpec, it seems like almost any time they come out and race, they are always a front runner. And Solpec actually won the last time out at Daytona, and over Imperial, and both the Matrix Black and Silver. So I think this is the first time that Matrix is looking at themselves saying, okay, we actually have some competition here. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. In Matrix really looks like that they have come up and answered the call in round number 2 so far. Granted, Mendonca second and a half ahead of both the Matrix GT3Rs, but we're still early in this race. Anything can happen. Pit strategy is definitely going to come into play here at this juncture of the race a little bit later on. But, Solpec, perfect for Matrix Black, really trying to up their game, to say the least. Before I hand this off to you, Jake, we actually saw in one of the chats, Kerry Brooks is at a home show, and he's showing our coverage. So we've got people who probably for the first time are catching on to not only PCA TRS, but to iRacing Sim Racing. So that could be absolutely fun. Oh, a little bit of a contact there with David Hopkins and Anthony Carbone Jr. as both those drivers able to drive away.
Oh, that's going to really hurt there. Anthony Carbone Jr. able to pull away. I know that his son, Anthony Carbone III, is having a little bit of a look right now here in chat, who's been a little bit busy with us here. But that bit of contact at Sunset Bend, you see it quite a bit. Everyone wants to be onto the inside line, so you've got to try and fight for as much room as you can. And if one car pinches down and one car wants to ease out, 2 into 1 doesn't quite make 2. So that is where you find all of the troubles. Now, if you are here for the first time, you're trying to understand the Porsche Club of America, this isn't the sort of series where you can expect just anyone and everyone to jump in and go out there and race, because first of all, you have to be a Porsche Club of America member.
Exactly, in order to be a Porsche Club of America member, gotta own a Porsche. So, 6 to 1 half dozen the other. It can be any Porsche, really. So if you want to get a 944, you're eligible to be in the Porsche Club of America, which is absolutely fun. And, you get to go across all the racing. You can go to take a look at the races, be a part of the racing, whether it's here in the sim or in real life as well. Here's Tom Price as he's holding off some traffic there. 10th in class, he's got Adam Gerling, Jeremy Hall, and Peter Coomer not too far away.
So they are going to be out there in the mix. And for those who are looking around at this, this is sim racing, ladies and gentlemen. So at the very core level of what you see out there from racing action, imagine exactly what you would see in the real world. This is a like-for-like replica laser scan here of the Sebring International Raceway. So what does that mean? It means that the track surface was exactly as it was scanned back in the day. And so it will mean that to the very inch out there for every single driver, they are driving on what effectively is this Sebring International Raceway circuit. The cars that they are running, the Porsche GT3R here, this 911. You've got the likes of the Porsche 963s out there, the hypercars. They are replica life scans of what these cars are doing, and so they are fine-tuned to the highest level to make sure that they replicate the pace, the grip properties, everything available to make the car feel like it would do in the real world. And so when you're looking around and seeing why there is so much fun and why we have a field of 28, 29 cars out here at Sebring, here at Sim Racing for the Porsche Club of America, it's because this is one of the most fantastic ways to go out there and race in a Porsche, and you're not going to risk damaging your Porsche if you go and take your Porsche out to a track day.
And Jake, you know as many real-world racers as I do, and I've heard, those who have raced this platform of the 992.2, and have gone in the sim, and they have said, look, pound for pound, this is the closest that we have come so far from running the real race car into the sim version of it. So what you see here, exactly like you said, is the 992.2 that you can purchase if you have the money, or if you want to rent it from a team, run it in club racing, Porsche Sprint Challenge, Porsche Carrera Cup North America, IMSA WeatherTech Series, anywhere really around the world. And you too could go on these tracks if you have enough racing experience. But also to think about, a lot of these teams now are starting to look to sim racers. There's a handful of teams that have a sim racing team as part of their driving ladder. So if you're good enough to race, I'm going to use a real world driver right now, Ian Porter, who's running in IMSA later this year. He was brought up from sim racing, won in Porsche Sprint Challenge North America in the Cayman class, and then started progressing up through the ladder because of his experience.
Oh, and on top of that as well, you look at what Porsche in America are doing. Just on Wednesday night will be the start of the Porsche Esports Carrera Cup North America. So that's going to be absolutely fantastic to see. If you are a big fan of North American racing out there with these Porsches, that's a brilliant chance to go and see what amazing sim racing is going to be, as the best that North America has to offer decides they're going to battle it for 6 racing weeks to decide who is champion and start off effectively the road over towards the Porsche Tag Heuer Esports Super Cup.
And by the way, we've got to give credit where credit's due. Our good buddy Joe Peak, I know that he's been working on this for the past couple of years with Porsche North America, and they loved the idea. It was just a matter of getting it together. Joe's such a big believer of iRacing, and for him to get this done, and I know that I've seen the team that's commentating it, absolutely jealous, by the way, but either way, this is an absolute fantastic opportunity for somebody, because you get to race against the world running this 992.2 Cup car. There's Ryan LeMay now finally catching to the back of the 992 Cup class. And by the way, Jake, as you like to hear me say, now the game's afoot.
The game is afoot, and I heard that Joe Peak sends his regards to you, Jeremy. It's Charlie Boyer now working through the traffic. We take a driver's perspective then in car as we run through here around the Le Mans chicane and to Jean de Bienne. Now Ryan LeMay here taking a patient approach, trying to attack with the power off of the exit, spool up the hybrid, then allows for that full deployment of electrical energy that allows the attack on the main straight to go at 280 kilometers an hour. Little move across there by Jeremy Hall of the Stallions GT3 Triple R there, that was trying to not block going into Sunset Bend, but more rather at that section, try and get in the mirror of the car in front, which would have been Adam Gerling at Chroma Motorsport White, to say, look, I'm going to get in the mirrors. I might decide to try and follow the 963s through if you lift off too much and leave the door open.
Exactly, and you know what? For some of these drivers, it's the first opportunity that they get a chance to really race really hard coming up through club racing, because even in iRacing, there's a different kind of a ladder to get up to where you're at. Right now, we're technically at the middle of the ladder because you have drivers with mixed skills. Some are just getting into Porsche club racing on the sim side, where they race the sprint races during the week. Others, like your Solpex and your Samantha Tan Racings, they're more versed because they do different races during the week, but especially in the 963s, because you don't want to jump right into what is essentially either a GTP or a hypercar, depending on what flavor of international sports car racing you really like. As you see the battles up and down the field, there's Mendonca just saying so long, see you later. He's going to let the Matrix Black and Silver battle off with Ed Icing Ring as they have closed into one another, but now it's also an all-Matrix battle going down, heading towards Holman Strait.
Can I just give some time to credit here this Matrix Black livery? They're doing a throwback with their team to the old Lotus John Players special style liveries that you'd see in Formula Racing. The black and the gold and the marking with the stylized font. That is a wonderful livery on that Porsche.
Oh, absolutely lovely. And, you see a lot of drivers who, they try the Lotus color. It doesn't matter what car it is. With this 992.2, it absolutely looks striking, to say the least.
Yeah, this is a wonderful car out there, and we are seeing that in spate as they work through turn number 1 out there. Suddenly the gap, though, creeping out over the last few laps or so. They just did a 2-minute .4. By comparison, David Mendonca, a 2-minute .2. So that's 0.2 of a second, and that is the difference why the gap is now up to 1.9 seconds. Here is Peter Kuma and James Hu out there on a scratch. So last 10th New England and Gone Broke Racing here battling. This is Pro versus Challenger, and for the moment it's the Challenger car that ends up on the wrong side then for it. So sorry, Club. So that's the Club car that finds itself a little bit further behind. They've got Missile Motors then for company then of the 210. That is Anthony James, who will be looking to also try and work a way through. And so you're seeing the differences out there. First stop of the day, it is the 711 of Addition Ren then in the pits. That is Devin Hopkins, who has taken the decision to come down in. And we would say that with strategy available to drivers here and the full fuel tank available, I would turn around, I would look at this and go, yeah, I am probably saying that this is an alternate strategy.
That is an alternate strategy. It's actually the second pit stop of the day as Chroma Motorsports Black with Randy Teague behind the wheel came in and out with a 7.6 second stop. Devin Hopkins in and out 28.6 seconds. And so,
would
yeah,
Teague's
interesting to see the... Go ahead.
Sorry, would Teague's pit stop would have been because they started from pit lane?
You know what? That's a good point. I remember that. I forgot that they did start from pit lane. So yeah, that indeed would be the first pit stop of the race. So that's a good call there.
Yeah, so that's how it's going to set out. So Devin Hopkins out and away. Charlie Boyer then just seeing the traffic play the wrong way. And on this lap, a full 0.8 of a second's worth of difference. So you're talking about getting stuck behind a car maybe for a corner or an apex too many, where Ryan LeMay has got through the traffic and now is able to start pulling on the gap. They've got about 7 seconds over to the sport category car of Backmarker Motorsports, who find themselves then in that third position. And so as far as the categories go, you've got Pro, you've got Club, then it's Sport, and then Challenge is the bottom category out there, or the fourth category, which would be there. Here comes a look down the inside to turn 3. In comes Leon Snyman. I think we're now hitting a pit stop window here as James Huth is going to find the pass, but there is going to be more opportunities. They're going to scrap off of turn number 5. Slow then to the exit will go Adam Gerling, and Chroma Motorsport White are going to be in quicksand. Here comes Joseph Evers from Motorsport down to the inside, but it's a good amount of braking on the outside. You could use the rotation of the car, the grip that is available mechanically, put the power on the exit, and just about trying to find a move. Oh, and they're going to get shuffled out of the way there by Rob Neville from last 10th Foundry.
Yeah, so last 10th really working their way around the field. Hey, by the way, we're talking about some of the moves being made. James Huth up 10 spots from his grid spot right now, sitting 11th in class, 17th overall, just 11th in the GT3 R class. But what a fantastic jump that he has had so far. And yeah, more lights flashing there as the GTPs. Oh, this is where it gets very dicey, as at some point you got to do some give and take. But will this give or the take be at the expense of having the car off course?
Now, here's something to remember. Just because you flash the lights doesn't mean you're automatically entitled to make the move. So last 10 purple, and then out there, they've got the name in on the championship as last 10 Foundry on the championship point. So they are currently second in the GTP Club category. 2 cars are dispatched up down the inside. Power off the exit to get past the last 10 ITD car. Then that will be next to move on through. It's the 016, and they managed to do that without too much trouble. But if you flash the lights, that's not get out of my way. That is, I would like to jump through. And the first penalty, as administered by the live race stewarding team, has now come through, and it is for the Plaid Roadrunner Hurricane car then, which has got an incident with car number 8 out there, and that car 8 is Alder Creek Performance Racing, and that's why we maybe saw Leon Snyman, in the pit earlier. So that will be a drive-through penalty then that will be assessed and will have to be served within 4 laps.
Yeah, it's great to have a live stewarding here, so everything done on the up and up. You see Matrix Silver leapfrogged ahead, Matrix Black, so I wonder if there are a little bit of team orders saying, you know what, if we can't catch up, let's try and see the other order to see if we can close in on Solpec. But then again, you have David Mendonca behind the wheel of that number 919, so it's going to be easier said than done, and just watching the Solpec team all around has been nothing short of spectacular. You talk about the lights flashing. I equate it to on the highway. Flash the lights to show you're there, but you know what? You probably won't be let in if the other drivers are involved in some sort of battle. And here's the thing, too, that's really neat about iRacing that you don't get in live racing for those who are new to this, is you have several ways of finding out who's around you, how close they are. You can have a live spotter. You could have a computer spotter as well. There are plenty of ways to find out where everybody is in relative to you. You can see your own times and try and find ways to improve upon those times as well.
So for those who are brand new and don't quite understand that concept here, Jeremy, the role of the spotter out there is a very Americanized system of getting a little bit of more eyes out there. And generally you would find, I would say, if you could give a little bit more information, out there at various points on the circuit, you can have more than one, for example, but generally you'll find them on the highest tower and vantage point you possibly can.
Exactly, and it goes from track to track where you can have 2 spotters, you can have 3 spotters at tracks like Daytona. You have one up high on the tower, and they basically, if there's multiple spotters, they'll work together. So, okay, I have this point to point. Jake, you're going to be over here in Sector 2. You're going to have this point to point. And sometimes they don't see the whole area. They're just there at danger opportunities. So right here in Cunningham, through Le Mans, you could have some. I know over the past years, IMSA has really cut down on putting temporary scaffolding for these spotters to go up high and see as much as they can, but teams will employ multiple spotters at one point so the drivers know, okay, well, I've got this car behind me and this other car I'm closing in on, so this is where I'm going to pass them. And it's another helpful skill for these drivers, so they're aware of the world around them. Like you said, it's a very American thing. In fact, it started in stock car racing, and just in the past 10, 15 years, it moved over to sports cars, and most teams say, you know what, we can't live without this.
And the reason why is it gives the drivers more information when they're in the car. It means that drivers are not unsighted. When you're in that car, okay, and you're trying to understand what can you see out of the window, you're constantly not just scanning the road, but you're also scanning the sides of the roads, because you're looking at the marshal posts out there and you're trying to see, is there a flag out there that is alluding to any danger out there? So am I looking for a yellow flag? Am I looking for a red and yellow flag, which is sometimes an oil flag? Sometimes you've got the blue flag with the yellow line that goes through it in America. That's your back marker's lap flag, which is out there. So you're looking around for all the different understandings of the flags that will show to you from race control and the way they're trying to get you to understand what's going on. If you've got a spotter in your ear, that can relay that information verbally rather than having to use the sights and then cross-reference that you used to see before that became more popular.
Exactly. And, it's very helpful in some parts. Here's Rob Neville coming into the hairpin. We have something happen up. Yep, that's going to happen a lot as well, where the back end just wants to see what that front end's looking at and just snaps around. Thankfully, Neville had nobody around him, and here's Nicky Chan, his GT3 teammate, and the bumps once again catch out another driver. So we can right now know at least one that we know of as he almost gets that rear end taken out. But, like, say, for example, if I'm Shea McNeely's spotter right here, I have timing and scoring on my iPad, and I also have the track follow the dots on on another iPad. And I'm saying, okay, you're X amount ahead, you're X amount behind your teammate, you've got X amount back there, that's car number, giving them as much information as they can. Like, okay, the car's faster here, it's slower here, so you might want to optimize, try to pass them here. It's just another way for drivers, as you said, it's another tool for them to be able to use. Or if they're losing time in some spot, hey, we're losing time here, you might want to do this instead. So a spotter can be a spotter, or a spotter can be a coach as well.
And in terms of that coach, if they're playing on the same team like they are doing so at Matrix, they could have made the call, which they have done clearly, of the car Matrix Silver is a faster team than you. Let them go ahead and give them a go to try and reel in Solpec. You can hang on using a slipstream to give yourself a chance. Oh, that was the very nearly, and it was contact. And now the track's going to junk up, and they're all going to go through. The Matrix cars point at each other. Now that's a very dangerous reverse on a live circuit from with Chris Pais approaching, who just about avoids it then. So Matrix suddenly find themselves bamboozled. It puts Imperial Kingfisher and Ed Elshenring then into second, and Samantha Tan up into third.
And that's another good example of why having a spotter around the circuit's important. If I had somebody there at turn 3, I'm on the radio to my drivers saying, hey, we got a big mess up in turn 3. Couple cars stopped in the middle of the course, go drivers left. Okay, now they're doing this. So that's another reason for a spotter, and it's very helpful. But yeah, Samantha Tan, Imperial moving up, both Imperial cars, Kingfisher and just straight up Imperial moving up. Absolutely fantastic for them, but not so good for Matrix.
No, it's not the greatest idea in the world for Matrix there. And it's all started really with the back markers there and the contact that had come on through. So, well, not necessarily the back markers, but one of the last 10 teams, last 10 purple, who have been assessed a penalty for that instance. So Justin Tipton, you can see there, last 10 Foundry, lock up, last 10 purple, lock up, just tag the rear quarter panel there, the rear left. And that's all it takes sometimes when you're on the brakes and trying to avoid any contact. They have to turn at some point into the corner. And so here's a look from Rob Neville, trying to get it slowed, and he's trying everything he can to avoid the contact, but the closing speed's just a tiny bit too much.
And it looked like it was the slightest tap, as well as Neville's right into the pits to answer the call of that black flag. So he will fall down the GTP order, but thankfully it's still early enough, Jake, to where this penalty, as long as it's not too damaging, it might not hurt him too much in the standings. Still second in the GTP, one of the GTP classes, so that's good news for him. However, he's still going to fall back to Kieran Racing, who sits second overall.
Yep, so that will be in club, which is the second highest category out there, and so they will remain in fourth position, but now they are a full minute and a second down after taking the transit time. This is now where Samantha Tan, Racing Esports, are going to bring themselves into play. You don't need to be aggressive early on, but they have, with the way that they have driven, given themselves a platform, and that is really critical here in a race like this. So they will be sitting down looking at the opportunity of how am I going to understand this move and try and dissect it to move up into second position, rather than just going, oh, I'm going to make a move here, going to make a move there, going to try and look at the inside. It's about placement. How do you choose the right area of the circuit to go and make a move?
Exactly. And that's half the key right here. And you just got to cruise your way into whatever you need to do to really go through and make the pass. Hey, speaking of cruises, we've got a wonderful sponsor here this year for the Team Racing Series.
Some trips are felt beyond words. No one connects you to Alaska like Princess. Princess Cruises. Book now.
They're absolutely wonderful. Then as we get ourselves set then for what will be an all-important run then as they get this all sorted. There is, I have a little bit of miscommunication there. Apologies, ladies and gentlemen. But we are going to now push on in here with this battle that is still then unfurling at this moment in time. Tyler Campbell is still trying to find the way through up into second over Ed Elshenring then for this position. And so this is where Imperial Motorsports Kingfisher are going to be there at this moment in time. But Tyler Campbell then going through the Gurney Bend over towards turn number 7 out there, the hotel hairpin, or 6, sorry, is going to hit the brakes. And now you're trying to work out, okay, there are key places on the circuit you can make the pass. So how is the slipstream going to work that is going to give you that opportunity?
I will say you were right the first time by saying turn 7, because it's weird to see the numbers sometimes, especially here in the States, going around Cunningham. And yeah, even with Big Bend, you still have a good drafting opportunity. I got to say, my first trip to the 12 Hours of Sebring a couple of years ago, I was finally able to, walk around the facility and see these cars working their way around. So it gives me a better understanding of how these cars race around here. You see the GTP traffic also closing in on this battle for position as they are working their way through 15 and 16, and the GTP is going to be in their lap here in no time. But turn 6 is a great drafting opportunity to close in on that hairpin, which, by the way, if you go down to the the Sebring 12 Hour, it is an absolutely fantastic place to catch some of the great racing action that you have there. But so really, Big Ben gives you about 4, I should say, good drafting opportunities, especially if you are in a spec series like you'll see with the Porsche Carrera Cup North America, which will be supporting the 12 Hours of Sebring in just 1 week's time. As another lap ticks down onto the system, this battle for second between Imperial Kingfisher and Samantha Tan heats up, but it's going to have GTP traffic going into turn number 3. Let's keep an eye on them as they decide. I think it's LeMay who's sitting there. Discretion, better part of valor, heading towards Big Ben once again. They will have to get out of the way or let the GTP traffic by.
Yeah, that was Rob Neville of Last 10th Purple trying to go by. Anthony James also in a scrap. This is 14th overall as in comes Anthony Carbone Jr. Then to make a pit stop, Missile Motors at this moment in time. Now looking to eye up then, or are eyeing up then the cars around them. It's Motorsports who are just behind, but slicing away through this battle right now is your overall race leader. So for the moment, this is where you understand Cat 5 Racing GTP and their race. They've got a 10-second lead at the front of the field. They take a big, wide, boring line to try and go through. Not to say that it was boring in the sense that there wasn't really anything going on, but rather taking as much track as possible to go and get as much room as possible to make the moves out there. I think that's going to be critical to see when you're trying to coordinate between 2 different classes and multi-class style racing. How much room are you going to give the other class?
Exactly, and that's half the battle there, so you're not colliding with one another. I was looking at the chat while you were chatting there, Jake, and Exploit saying, what do the black numbers mean? That's a good question. Black numbers mean, well, we're not 100% sure what class they're in, so we'll get those for you as soon as we can. And yeah, you see the 963 flashing his lights, trying to get around, frantically, I should say, get around the GT3 traffic. But you look around, and he doesn't have too much to worry about right now, as you see the 210 working his way around the S's on the back part of the circuit. So still plenty to play for, as that's Anthony James and the Missile Motors we mentioned earlier. There's the 141 of Johan Nye and the Mach Schnell 1 number GTP right there. Second in the sport class for GTP. So looking pretty good. Of course, they are second place right now in points, as that's how they finished at Daytona last time out.
Yep, so Mark Schnell 1 out there doing a really good job in the 141 here in this Porsche 963 GTP out there and showing what it is all about. And currently trying to stay in range. They're a minute behind their class leader at this moment, which is Backmarker Motorsports, and doing a good job. But with the Mark Schnell teams, they've obviously got the Eins team. They've got the Zwei team. They are waiting for a dry team, which would be a third team out there, Jeremy. And I would assume then that this league would need to look around and maybe get a Porsche 718 Clubman GT4 in play.
You know, that would be absolutely fantastic, but then you run into the possibility of 50 to 60 mile an hour closing speeds between the GTP and the Club Sport GT4. As we've seen this Club Sport GT4 in some endurance series in and around the iRacing platform, but I wouldn't mind it. I think it's an absolutely gorgeous race car, gorgeous street car as well, to say the least, if we're being frank, but I don't think that the closing speeds are going to be appropriate to run the 963 and the Club Sport GT4 together in one class. But stranger things have happened.
No, I do very much agree with you that there has to be an element of safety out there with that as they go. Very even in terms of the times between Ed Elshionring and Tyler Campbell out there. 2:09, playing a 2:07. We are nearing 2 o'clock in the afternoon in sim time on this, I would say, elevated in sim speed that we have got of the sun traveling around here at this circuit. The track has skyrocketed in terms of temperature up to 47 degrees. Now, in terms of having hot temperature, as in comes your overall leader at Cat 5 Racing GTP to make their stop, you get a sense of what makes track conditions difficult. When it's hot here in iRacing, you get a lot of understeer out there. When it's colder tyres generates a lot more slip and more oversteer out there. So right now, they're having to navigate a track that's rapidly heating up, and so they're going to have to take longer through the corners, and they're going to have to get more rotation in the wheels, so you're going to wear the tyres quicker.
Exactly, and now we're starting to see that pit window open, and I think that LeMay's trying to go for the undercut here, although he was in the lead, so maybe he's trying to get a little bit bigger distance between he and Boyer, as it looks like LeMay will stay into the car here for this stint, and he'll probably jump out next stint. But Charlie Boyer with a 6.7 second lead over Costas, and something else I was thinking about too, with the 4-time acceleration that we're seeing here today. You mentioned tire wear, and you see that track temperature is scorching. I have a feeling that our usual 45-minute stint for the GTPs and the hour 15-minute stint for the GT3Rs might be a little bit more condensed because everything's just changing so quickly.
Everything is changing, and so in an ever-changing race, you've got to make sure that you are on top of what you and the team are looking at. And Elshionring really pushing around Sunset Bend, and Sunset Bend's really difficult actually on a really nuanced element because you're pushing over to the outside then through the final corner. They've paved over that final section. It used to be grass on the outside. It's now just pure as you go along that section, a little bit raised as you have that light lined up. But the tire bundles around this place are white and blue, and it's a white tire bundle at the end of the run onto a white concrete wall on that left-hand side. So it's very easy if you're not paying attention to think, oh, I'm close enough to the wall, that's fine, and then you clip the tire bundle.
Well, what's different from this track than you see from other world-renowned racetracks is this track has more Armco than you would normally see concrete as well. Kind of gives it more of that old-school feeling that a lot of tracks are shying away from because of the ultimate speed of a lot of these vehicles, where we've seen crashes, quite frankly, where cars are just going right through the Armco and into areas where they really shouldn't be. Of course, right here, if you remember a couple of years ago, the Wheelan prototype in the Sebring 12-hour lost it, hit the tire bundle, and landed on top of it. And we've also seen a Trans Am car that's gone through the tire bundle as well. Look, there is safety here, and like you said, because of the different colors of the Armco, the walls, and the curbing, if you're running fast enough and you're too focused, you may think, oh, I'm close enough, we're going to be A-okay, but at the same time, it could lead to trouble very early on or later on in the race when you get into that tunnel vision of, okay, I've got to set this time, I've got to set this position, I got to get around this driver.
I think there was also an ad about 10, 15 years ago of one car in, I would say, sort of GT spec, hitting the brakes at the hotel hairpin, completely missing out, rolling out then, went through the gates down at the back and ended up on sort of the freeways outside, just sort of driving around for a little bit beyond the hairpin. I can't remember exactly what that was, but there was something of that ilk. Devin Hopkins in for a second time, so something's not quite right there with the strategy of pitting here from Devin Hopkins. I wonder whether that car is just burning up through the tyres more than most.
It has to be. Yes, I do remember that was a vintage GT1 / Trans Am race car that lost its brakes. And here's the thing too, the layout used to be, they would actually run down that straightaway. So Ramiro, next time we go to turn 7 of the hairpin, I kind of want to go pull out to kind of show what the evolution of the hairpin corner because it's quite interesting. We'll stick with this battle, though, for 14th in GT3R. You've got Missile Motorsports, Missile Motors and Motorsports there. And there you go. So you see where they're turning there. The cars would actually go straight. If we keep panning to the right, you see at the time how little runoff they would have in that corner because Sebring, this part of Sebring actually used to be barracks and houses for those who were stationed at Sebring. And you see how it turns right. When you talk about that GT1 car, it just went straight off and then turned left and hit the gate and ended up in the parking lot there of the hotel.
Very easily done out there, and we see a wonderful look at the Marshall post as well. There at turn number 7, the hotel hairpin that get itself set. So here, as part of the running that we have here in the Porsche Club of America Team Racing Series, we are thrilled to have Princess Cruises continue as our PCA Sim Racing title sponsor for 2026. With 17 ships sailing to 345 destinations on 7 continents, world-class cuisine inspired by the places we visit, and the friendliest crew at sea, Princess is ready to welcome you on board. And specifically for PCA members, join the Treffin at Sea 2026 Pacific Wine Country Cruise on the Grand Princess, sailing from Vancouver to Los Angeles, September 19th to September 25th. Go to the website link on the screen, pca.princesspartnerships.com, or call 833-679-2188 to speak to a PCA travel concierge agent. That is 833-679-2188. First pit stops then are firmly in the window, and everybody now is lining up. Fuel is lining up, tyres is lining up now to settle in to the next phase of the race, and for some teams, a driver change.
Yeah, it looks like a handful of teams. Last 10th Great White, I think Dirksen is hopping in the car there. Some of your front runners deciding to keep things going. Cameron Martin now in for Samantha Tan Motorsports. Matrix Black and Silver keep their drivers out front. And interestingly enough, Jake, your top, let me see here, top 5 GT3R cars have not pitted. So Huth, Coomer, Bryce, Gerling, and Ice Ring are all out there. Actually, Ice Ring's the first car to pit, so Gerling the last one to not pit there. In the Chroma Motorsports white number 495, would not be surprised to see them come in this next time by. And of course, you also have a couple of GTPs who have not pitted as well. So we'll see, because Neville just did a pass through. Johan Nye in the Mach Schnell 1, and Lisa Eskridge in the last 10th Lovebirds. I'm sure her husband will get in there at some point as well. So Mendaka also not into the pits. It's going to be interesting to see how this pit strategy works out. As we said, battle for 3rd and GT3R still heating up between Coomer and Bryce.
Yep, so they're now looking at this battle and saying just before a pit window, this is a battle right now of Pro and Club, and it is the Pro of Tom Bryce behind, the team is Pro, but Tom Bryce is a club driver, as mentioned out there, because how they, your leader in GT3R comes in, how these teams will look about in terms of their pace is they have what is known as an I rating. Now, Jeremy, for those who are brand new and are watching and do not understand what I mean by an I rating for the first time, what do we mean by an I rating, and how is it splitting the different cars and classes here today?
So basically, the I rating is how you do on a certain, on a certain level. So you have several let's see here. Give me a second. Let me think about that, because, there's I rating and then there's the class ranking, because I'm just drawing a blank. I lost it. Don't mind me, but go ahead. Let's talk about the action. I'll get that in a second.
Absolutely. So we got some brilliant racing here. There's Chris Costis, who is currently out there for Backmarker Motorsport, who has gone longest than anybody else at the moment on the field in GTP. In GT3R right now, it is currently going to be a very wonderful scrap, as we got currently a few drivers in, but Solpec Precision Racing out and away with a pretty nice gap of about 7 seconds now over Imperial Motorsports Kingfisher as the nearest challengers, and they haven't been able to shake Samantha Tan through the first line of stops, and you get the sense of getting back out onto the transit lane here with pace to go and work with. For the moment, we note the gap now of about 20 seconds now between Cat 5 Racing GTP on screen on your bottom right now and Kainaran, who are the team who are trying to give chase.
All right, let's try this again as my brain is back under. It's like, you know, you came to me and my brain's like, eh. But anyway, iRating is basically your skill on the circuit. The better you do, the better that you stay on the track. You don't run into anybody. You have quality passes. And the higher iRating is, the more you can run these more elite races like here, or you get put into a better class of cars depending on, you know, what the series is. So for here, you have the GTP Pro, which has a fairly high iRating, and then you go down to Club, and then Sport, and then Challenge. Same with the GT3 R class. Now, what I was about ready to talk about is the safety rating, which you know, gives you a different class of license. So the higher your safety rating, the higher your class of license is. And you start off with rookie, and then you go from D to C to B to A. Sometimes you're lucky enough to get the pro as well if you get a high enough rating. And Jake, the series you and I do normally on Monday evenings, there's a handful of those drivers who hold that pro license.
Yeah, and that pro license will be the opportunity to be invited to things like the IMSA Esports Championship, as will be 3 wide, Matrix Black and Imperial Motorsports going out there for position then as they scrap with everything they've got onto the main straight. So that is Chad Henson there getting by Shea McNeely, and so McNeely is going to try and get the drive then through turn 1. This small flick right does count as a corner. That's turn 2, and then they'll go to turn 3, and that is a big old defensive line. So McNeely now is going to set this up, try and cut up, and use turn 5, which is where you put the power down completely, to go and say, look, over towards turn 7, I can now find the opportunity to make this move, hugging the inside. There's no curb there, so the grass does sometimes dip down if you're not too careful, but outside line is going to be the search and in through. But the pro license out there for cars like these, for example, these GT3Rs, you could run a GT3R in the IMSA Esports Global Championship. That's what a pro license would go out there and represent. And another license that it might represent would be the brand new addition that iRacing has announced over the past week 13 here, is that DTM will be hosting their own esports championship, also running GT3 spec.
That really piqued my interest, especially as somebody who watched DTM as a kid during the off seasons. You know, it's not the monstrous race cars I remember as much, but either way, fantastic to see DTM enjoying their start here in iRacing momentarily. And this battle for position really has been nice and tight there, but you do see that you do see that prototype right back there. That is, I believe I did see, that's Lisa Eskridge. It could be in the 012. That is neat Eskridge, and she dives that last 10th Lovebirds to the inside. Finally is able to get around. Took her most of the lap to try and get around these two. Oh, that was a little bit of a possible late dive there, but the 453 makes his way around the corner. And Imperial Motorsports Henson looking pretty good as Shea McNeely sitting there back in the pack. And by the way, Jake, we've seen Lisa Eskridge out there for 27 laps now. She has not come into pit, really stretching the energy there of that GTP as they go down off of turn number 1. I thought we were going to end in tears as those lights are flashing like crazy on Shea McNeely's car.
Oh, trying to get around the outside and then runs out of road. Chad Henson just understanding the width then of that Porsche GT3R out there, and that is of course a 991 that is doing a brilliant job then of holding its station and proving exactly what it's worth. They've got Matrix Silver there just behind as well, so for Justin Tipton as well. Matrix right now, same strategy, of course. They both came together. They're both on the recovery run out there, and we are, what, 53 minutes into this race right now? So if you're 53 minutes in to a race like this one, and you're turning around and saying, right, well, we're 5th and 6th, but we've got the pace to be 3rd and 2nd, out there, or maybe getting close to the leaders. Last thing you want is what happened where the two came together and it's tough. And this is where it's getting very difficult, because they're trying to look at each and every corner now. They're at Tower and along the greatest named straight in all of motorsport, the Flying Fortress Straight. They can't find right now, Jeremy, any real weakness or opening to go and make the move. And that is frustrating for a driver when you can't quite fit the puzzle pieces together of the Rubik's Cube.
And that's why I think, spec racing is at its greatest, because like this, you have cars of the same spec and the driver talent. Oh, that was very questionable. The cutting in front of that GTP right there as the 453. Here's the thing. When it comes to running with faster traffic, you have to be predictable, much like on the street. And now McNeely forced back to the outside. And I think this time the pass may stick as they're head on towards the straightaway as Henson. Man, this is just nose to tail good stuff as McNeely got to dive to the inside, has the optimal line going into turn number 1 and gets that position finally. And that's what we're talking about. Where can you make your move and make things happen? As once again, Henson goes to the inside, going to force it right in there. They're neck and neck for position. Of course, that's between Tipton and Henson. And now the Matrix Black cars are 4th and 5th for the time being, 4th and 6th now. It's a little bit of dust kicked up there through turn number 4. And McNeely watching this happen, opening up a little bit bigger gap. He'd love to help his teammate out, but he knows that Henson will definitely attack if that happens.
I'd like to take this moment to really appreciate the way that Chad Henson drove that last half a lap there, Jeremy, and I think you'll be the same in understanding. There is a certain level that a driver understands what they're trying to do on circuit at a level just more than I'm going to make the move. So the way that he was driving along the main straight, he wasn't giving any room out there to Shane McNeely to come across and take the natural racing line that he wanted to. At the last moment, from being in the middle of the road and trying to pinch Shane McNeely on the left-hand side of the track, he moved over to the right so he could take his natural line. The only issue that came in for Chad Henson is he didn't quite get himself enough room for the cut under, which is what he was trying to do to get back at Shane McNeely. And so that left him backwards into clutches here of Justin Tipton for this last lap. But you can really get the sense that even on the chances where you break, the car placement of Chad Henson is absolutely perfect. Now watch this. So the gap's open. He sees that there is the move over to the right-hand side. He can't move anywhere at the moment, and it's going to be pretty much the same back from Justin Tipton. You can't sit back. You can't go and make that move, and that's just a wait from Chad Henson to go and get by. Absolutely amazing car control.
No, it's absolutely fantastic, and I agree. While the execution was there, the way it went around wasn't the way that that was playing out in Chad Henson's head. Now he's losing time down the straightaway. I figured that Henson probably would have tucked right under that rear wing, but at the same time, this is an endurance race. It's not necessarily a sprint race with these cars trying to make their way through. And if this were a sprint race, I think we would see a little bit more elbows out racing. Got a couple of GTPs back there who are nose to tail, and they're not really battling for position. Because look, the closest battle that we see right now is between Mike Sachs and Johan Nye, the backmarker Motorsports 27, ahead of the Machina 1 by about 10 seconds. So GTP, it's all gapped right now. Here's Devin Hopkins working his way through onto the Almond Straight, and we see that a lot, though we don't see it with a driver who has a tight exit that loses it. So something strange must have happened there, but that's why the tire wall's there, because we see a lot of contacts on the inside of that corner with drivers going a little wide coming through turn number 16. Still battling, though, for second in GT3R with Imperial Motorsports Kingfisher. You've got Ed Eisenring behind the wheel that. Samantha Tan Racing Esports, Cameron Martinow behind the wheel there. But that's what I love about watching these spec races, is because these drivers, they learn so much racecraft that's like, okay, I'm going to try this. Oh, that didn't work. Well, maybe if I try something different, or let me try my approach different for the next time that happens. And that's why you see these so many spec racers move their way up through the field.
You absolutely do. And actually, I do want to go back to that incident and talk a little bit about it there, Jeremy, because I wanted to get your opinion on it. The way that you go in through the Le Mans chicane into Jean de Bienne corner, it's that long right, into the left, into the right. And how much does body roll play a huge factor in the sort of incident that we saw?
Oh, it plays a huge factor because normal circumstances are you got to stay in between the white lines. This is one of the very few areas of the racetrack that you actually have to use more of the road that's given to you just to set yourself up for Le Mans. You want to have that optimal body roll because it's going to propel you for those slingshot moves that you see right there, or it's going to propel you to defend from those slingshot moves. Schnell Eins now into the pits with Johan Nye. We'll see if he swaps out as he goes into his box. But back to what I was saying, there's such a long run down the Almond Straight into Sunset Bend, and I think that Sunset Bend's one of the most important corners here on that racetrack. Less important, though, than the Le Mans complex, because you have to be absolutely precise if you want to make that move in the Sunset Bend or set yourself up to go and make that move into turn one.
Yeah, so finding that ability to get the correction that you need at turn one, and so needing the run into Sunset Bend, needing the run at the next corner, that's what we call getting a momentum bait going, and this is what we see. You need a lot of momentum to go and get the moves that are the most inspiring out there. Now we've got lap traffic of the same category out there, and this is going to start checking up here. Cameron Martineau to try and get the move on Ed Aschenring to see if that pass will go. Devin Hopkins of Edition Ren will move over to the right-hand side of the circuit then, and it could have formed what we call a pick, where a car goes slow enough where you then are afforded an opportunity to make the move, essentially pickpocketing the position, but ultimately Cameron Martineau just as held up as Ed Aschenring was by that comparison, and so that didn't really open up the opportunity necessary. And this might be the reason why you're seeing Lisa Eskridge here being so good on the fuel save numbers compared to everyone else. At the moment where she sees that the track is not as ideal for getting the movement and the passing through, she backs right out of it and is happy to sit a lot longer behind some of the other drivers of the slower GT3R category in order to find the space on the circuit where she feels comfortable to make that pass.
Exactly, and here's the thing. These GTPs have the energy replenishment where the GT3Rs do not necessarily have it. So they can run more of a hybrid setup, which both IMSA and WEC are very huge on saying, okay, you know what? Our prototypes have this energy replenishment. What does that mean? That means that you can run, essentially instead of, letting off the throttle and extending your brake zone, you can go right to the battery power and kind of save some of that fuel. Of course, when you're launching off the pit stops too, that's why we have this sort of we have this technology, and this is something that you'll see in your street cars, sometime down the road if you're not seeing it already with a lot of them. But it still makes for a very powerful motor, and that's, I think, part of the reason why we're seeing Lisa Eskridge run all 31 laps right now without heading into pit road as Dave Douglas comes out of the pits. He is the Max Schnell Eins driver. I think he just went back into the pits, which is quite interesting.
Yep, so needing to make a secondary stop out there at the moment, as our focus is on Imperial Motorsports Kingfisher, as there will go a couple of last 10th cars. Ben Bolke and Lisa Eskridge both make the pass heading over to Sunset Bend. Let's take a listen in right now on some of the wonderful engine noises you can hear in these Porsches at the Porsche Club of America. That is a wonderful lap on board there with the Porsche GT3R that sits then in, or GT3R category there, and the car that sat in second position overall and in class, Imperial Motorsports Kingfisher. At long last, we get the understanding now of a pit stop in for Lisa Eskridge, going a full hour and 5 minutes in that GTP category, and a huge note of understanding, and I would say respect, for getting a car to go and fly that quickly around the circuit there. So that pretty much tells you all you need to know there between the likes of the Porsche 992 GT3R and the Porsche 963 GTP, which is out there and proving to be wonderful as Ken Eskridge now is getting into machine. Here's your leader out there at the moment for Cat 5 Racing GTP. This is Ryan LeMay, who is currently out there in front by 18 seconds at this moment in time over Kynaran Racing, with David Boyer then behind the wheel. The Kynaran team run with the Boyers together and look to always make as much of a challenge as they possibly can. And Jeremy, what we're seeing right now here is about controlling the middle of this race here for the Porsche 963 GTPs. All about giving as much of a chance as you can for a car that, let's be quite honest here, is incredibly difficult to drive.
Oh, really is. You know, you take a look at the driver roster on the 963s. Now in IMSA, I should say. I was going to say in WEC, because it was basically drivers who used to race in Formula One or, you know, ran something high-powered sports car, high-difficulty sports cars up and down the system. I mean, you know, granted, you had some star drivers in Joseph Newgarden, who won the Rolex 24 in a 963, but the roster up and down for, you know, Roger Penske, who campaigns these at IMSA, is absolutely fantastic. Ben Bulky has a meatball flag from Last 10th Foundry, so they're going to have to answer into the pits. And we have a new driver in Last 10th Lovebirds, where Ken Eskridge, he's back out, albeit 2 laps down, as the 012 now back out. But Bulky, wonder what happened there with the mechanical black flag, as you see that LeMay working his way around some of the GT3R traffic once again. And yeah, this is oh, that was almost close, as LeMay had to dive all the way to the outside to try and avoid this traffic.
Yeah, hefty traffic then that was going through. So that would have been Dave Douglas at Mark Schnell-Ines. It would have been Jake Gibino then from R-Speed Black, and Leon Snyman from Alder Creek Performance Racing. You have to get by all of those. There's also a penalty assigned then to Ben Bulky, who is down there in pit lane. So that is really going to hurt them as far as damage goes. I would look around at the damage that they've got. Oh, has this happened then through the final corner? They just overcommitted, and have they just glanced they've just glanced the barriers there on the right-hand side. The front then kicked off completely. Then they slam into the side. So the rear is going to demolish itself then as it goes around, and really a tough scenario out there. You get a sense of what those Michelin slick tires then look like on it as around you go, and how tough of a situation they are then left with, having to go and get themselves back out and away again. And they're able to get back out and away after a big hit like that by something called the fast repair system. Every team effectively gets one free pass to say, you broke your car, now you can go back out with a fresh new car. But if you do it again, you're going to be in pit lane. You're going to have to take the time to repair it.
And at least he was right there, right by pit entry, so didn't have far to go to drive the car back in. Didn't have to wait on a tow, because that would have been a long wait to get all the way back to pit road. Battle for second still heating up between Ed Isingring and Cameron Martineau. Ed's in the Imperial Motorsports Kingfisher with Cameron in the Samantha Tan Racing Esports. And let's see what happened to David Boyer, but I also want to get on to a point here. As the Kiernan Racing 963 takes a spin, that's an easy place to spin. Let's be honest here in turn 5. So no harm, no foul. We've seen a lot of pros make a mistake through there. Dave Douglas heavy on the brakes through Tower, and just misses the track by a little bit. All right, so Jake, I want to get your opinion on this. I remember watching Samantha Tan come up through the North American ranks. She ran some club racing in Canada, and then came over, ran here and there with some BMW teams, and now made her own team. Now has an esports team, which is new within the past couple of seasons, but I've got to say this. Kudos to Samantha, because, not only is she becoming a great driver, she's getting great teammates here and getting a good team around her, but she's making a name for herself also by one of these pro teams that has a sim ladder development system sitting there and waiting to, at some point, she can go, okay, you know what, why don't you come up here? Let's go test this, whatever, this BMW or whatever, a Porsche or something out there to get you up into like a touring car situation.
I think it's really clever, because what you are looking at now is that sim racing is starting to become this next generation out there of where the quick drivers are going to go and where they're going to be found and where you're going to understand who's got pace and who hasn't. Now, there's a difference between how quick you are in sim and how, say, for example, how healthy you are. There are certain drivers that won't have the body type or won't have the ability to go and translate how quick they are on the sim into a real-world seat. But you certainly get the sense that more often than not, the drivers who sim race have the ability to get up to speed quicker, have the ability to drive the same cars just as quick, and then realize that, okay, what's the driver pool that you've got compared to everywhere else? You've got a really, really strong understanding of the pipeline of development is critical. And so if you're looking at trying to find that next driver or talent that's going to go through, absolutely have your own esports team, like Samantha Tan Racing Esports have done at the moment. You look around at drivers like Cameron Martineau, for example. He spent time trying to get himself a real-world drive in the Skip Barber Formula iRacing series over the last couple of years, which we've seen drivers like Ivan Machado, for example, Sebastian Weldon, Dan Weldon's son, has got into the top three, and then Porsche Coander's Elvis Rankin has gone and won that championship as well in the past. So you start understanding that and you go, so now everyone knows that sim racers can be lightning quick. They translate to real world absolutely fantastically. And so for a team like Samantha Tan that here today has the likes of Cameron Martineau and Tyler Campbell, has streamers to give that understanding of exposure like Ruby Nekamata, for example, you've got a really strong base of a team in North America that can go out there and can basically build and develop as far as she wants to build and develop it.
And, here's the thing. How many female team owners are there in just in racing in general? There are very few. So for her to do something like this, it just goes to show that, she's here to stay and she's going to be a power. And I can't wait to see how Samantha Tan Racing really develops over the next couple of years. And she's doing quite well for herself. As you see, the proof is in the pudding, as the 38 is right now third in the GT3 R class, knocking at the door of second with Cameron Martineau. That's the battle of the race that we have so far, heading around turn number 4, now setting up for 5 through Big Ben under the new pedestrian bridge, which I've got to say, my short time at Sebring, I've seen them really make improvements to this facility, and it is darn near second to none. Wait a second, was that photographer following these guys? If that's a new update to iRacing, kudos to the devs. That was absolutely awesome.
I was doing the Oceanic Sim Racing Bathurst 12-hour, and I think anyone who's following a camera and following those around, I think they've got to have the colloquial name in sim racing now of cam holder.
Okay, I like that. Hey, by the way, Mark Schnell-Eins gets a black flag with Dave Douglas behind the wheel. So the 4th place prototype team going to have to answer that here in the next couple of laps, working around Cunningham. The stewards, well, they've been a little busy. They've handed out a handful of those solid black flags. Now, you may be asking, if you're new to watching this, what is the difference between a black flag and a mechanical black flag? Well, it's easy. The mechanical black flag, if you're at the track, it's basically a black flag with an orange circle in it, jokingly called a meatball flag, because It looks like a meatball before it gets on top of spaghetti, all covered with cheese. But a solid black flag means you have to answer the stewards. Both of them you have to answer the stewards. One is, I would say, less severe than the other because the solid black flag, that's also known as the naughty flag. You did something bad, and now you have to pay the penalty for it.
It very much is. I've heard it as well as explained as the blood orange flag out there as well, because you got an orange on the flag, and so you're hoping that you're not going to get yourself involved and into trouble. Into the pits will come Dave Douglas, and really pedestrian, trying to hit the line markers then to go on through. It's just 72 kilometers an hour down the lane. Now, if you try and translate that, Jeremy, what 72 kilometers an hour feels like, out there, 72 kilometers an hour, when you're on the freeway, for example, or you're on the highway, that feels pretty quick when you're going out there and you're trying to go through. You translate that to on a racetrack, what 72 kilometers an hour feels like. It feels so unbelievably slow.
Yeah, it isn't unbelievably slow. And I'll equate this. One thing I like to say is, so my previous life, I was the track announcer for a road course in the Midwest, and we had a professional race. Well, one of my duties early on, before they're like, you know what, kid, you need your start. Go here. Here's the microphone. Go have fun. Go work with, Greg Creeman. I was, in charge of most of the marshals. So my job was to drop them off. Well, we had an IMSA support series, and their speed limit at the time was 50 kilometers an hour down pit road. And I hear Jake going, because he knows how slow that is. You are crawling down pit road at 50 kilometers an hour. You feel like you're walking at that point.
Yeah, it's almost a case of you get to look around at everything, and it's the fact that you can go at 50 kilometers an hour, let's say, for example, and you will turn around and you will see a car go along the main straight. And at the moment, you take a look at these GTs right now here in the GT3R category, Matrix Silver and Matrix Black. Shane McNeely is doing 255 kilometers an hour on the brakes into Sunset Bend. And you're talking about a pit speed limiter of 72, so 180 kilometers an hour difference here at Sebring between going flat out and being down in the pit. It's like standing still and having someone just whoosh by you, and you don't even know what's gone breezing by.
Yeah, so it's just a matter of the speed difference here between pit road and the race circuit as we're watching the battle for fourth between teammates and Matrix Silver and Matrix Black. Justin Tipton and Shane McNeely still in those respective cars. You saw McNeely dip that wheel coming off of turn number 1 through 2, and now you see Tipton doing the same through turn number 5. And that's what's interesting about this track. It is in the center of Florida, but you got to think how narrow the peninsula is there in Florida. You still can get sand, and most of the dirt is sand. And when you see that sand get kicked up, it can get pretty messy, to say the least, as I have another eye on the Superior Motorsports Samantha Tan battle going out of Collier, headed down towards Tower Corner. The heavy right-hander 90 degrees as they work their way down the straight towards Bishop. But that's something that you and I talked about earlier, is you want to try and stay off the sand because it will suck you in if you get those tires in at just the right angle.
Yeah, it will dig you in, and so you'll find that the rotation speed of the wheels will change, and so that will be more than enough to see a car spinning around if you're not paying too much attention, even though you do have things like traction control available and limited slip differentials and the like that's there to try and help you stay out on circuit as much as you can out there in a race like this. But Jeremy, as far as I look at a circuit like Sebring, I think Florida has possibly one of the greatest racing cultures out there in the world. I don't know how many circuits you can sit down and say it's amazing. You start here in the middle of South Florida here at Sebring. You go 2 hours up northeast, you've got Daytona. You go across over to the left to Miami and go around the Dolphin Stadium. You've got the Miami International Autodrome that Formula One runs. And then if you want to go all the way down to the very tip of the panhandle, you've got Homestead.
Of course, also you're forgetting too, you want to go to the northwest here. You also have the yeah, well, not just Jacksonville, you also have St. Petersburg, which is really coming onto its own as one of the premier street courses in really not only North America, but the world. So, yeah, and there's a reason why so many series start their season in Florida. We're not even talking about the drag strips, the kart circuits, the ovals that are all across the state. They're littered there. Yes, the weather's one of them, but Florida is a motorsports-friendly haven for a lot of these drivers and a lot of these teams that come down here. And look, the proof's in the pudding. Visit Florida. Look at how many years that they sponsored across the board to promote their tourism, because they knew that they were bringing hundreds of thousands of race enthusiasts every year to that state to spend money. Part of it, it's got to be the mouse there in Orlando.
Yeah, there is definitely that element of it, and I know I've got a very good friend who lives actually in Florida, and I think has gone more times than he can they can count at this moment in time. So they're a wonderful person to be around and speak with. This is a battle thanks to the penalty that has been served by Mark Schnell-Ines. This is now where last 10th purple can have a real sniff at an opportunity, but struggling about then here to get by the last 10th great white car of Derek Dirksen. And when you've got a teammate in a lower category not moving over for you, I don't know what you need to do in order to go and get yourself up closer to go and get by. I think that's a really tough situation to try and deal with, that you're not getting by even your own cars out there by teammates as quick as maybe you'd want to, Jeremy.
Exactly, and that's the point. And you go on the radio, you go, guys, what do I have to do to get around? Because I am the faster car. It's not like Formula One where you have have all the team orders, but still, it just goes to show you just need to go around and race even harder. As you see the Mark Schnell-Ines slowing down just a little bit coming off the corner. And I think a lot of that also has to do with the energy replenishment of the car, which I'm kind of surprised they're doing it off the corner, but stranger things have happened. Either way, yeah, you just have to do your best and make it onto, make it around your teammate without wrecking them, as we've seen time and time again here in team racing. As you are on board right now with Ben Bulkley. Let's listen in, because I love the sound of this 963. And you hear right there how the motor shuts off for a little bit, goes in on the battery, and then immediately once it gets back on the gas, it goes back onto into the internal combustion engine.
It does, and so it's a wonderful piece of engineering, and the toughest thing you can possibly do out with an engine is to create a hybrid system, because you're taking, say, something of a natural resource, then a physical resource like fuel, for example, petrol, and then you are trying to marry that up with the ability to use power that is created kinetically, like electricity, to power a hybrid battery engine that is out there. So when you're trying to marry the two out there in a car like this Porsche 963, for example, it's now the door opens up and the move is going to be bursting through with pure pace on the battery to boost along this main straight to nearly 300 kilometers an hour, 294, before jamming on the brakes. Just to give an understanding of how much of a challenge this sort of technology is, why do you think, when we're going to look and move towards more sustainable forms of racing, why is it such a difficult process to build a racing hybrid battery and engine system?
Well, because it's no different than, I'm going to use Formula One as an example with Cadillac. It's no different than a manufacturer coming in and building a team that can compete up front, not necessarily with the McLarens and the Ferraris and the Mercedes, but maybe with a Red Bull, a Racing Bulls, and an Alpine. You can't really come in there and say, okay, we've got this reliable engine. For example, say, I'm going to use Tesla as an example. They're not going to come in and say, okay, we have a car that's going to run up front, and all of a sudden, it's braking every time, because when you race, you don't have that real world experience of, going 10 tenths for most of the race. You don't have that real world experience of passing somebody like you see Ken Eskridge doing here, going into the hairpin, as we see a replay as he slams on the brakes just a little bit and just loses it going to the hairpin. That happens a lot too. when you're just too hard on the brakes. So finding that balance. Let's listen in. Yeah, those rears just lock up. Yeah, just locks the rears. You know, that happens. Go ahead.
Yeah, so you're looking at trying to get that slowing speed down, and Ken Eskridge there proving how difficult it is. But it is a true marvel out there of a racing car, that Porsche 963. Here is the race on in GT3R, and they cannot separate each other at the moment. Imperial Motorsport Kingfisher and Samantha Tan Racing Esports. I think taking a look at that Porsche 992 GT3R out there at this moment in time, I think you would be in Cameron Martineau's position, quite tired of trying to understand then the profiling of the back. I think he can memorize it to the T. When he blinks and closes his eyes, he sees the car still there. And there's also the battle going on here for 11th overall in the category. So this will be Peter Kuma versus Jeremy Hall, both of whom sit down then in the club category out there in a battle. And so for the moment, it is Peter who is holding his line over Jeremy, but the Stallions GT3 Triple R, they're looking at this move because this would be for second in class.
Exactly. So you really got to gamble that move, which, by the way, we're almost at the halfway point. So now you start to take a look at, okay, is this strategy working? Still plenty of time to kind of change your strategy if you absolutely have to, but for the most part, you know, these teams are going to be married to whatever strategy that they came up with about an hour, well over an hour and a half ago, and probably this morning's meetings. I wouldn't say engineering meetings, because you don't have that type of data that you normally would with a actual, real life GT3R or a GTP. You have whatever you have in front of iRacing and any sort of third-party apps that you can use. You see Peter Coomer holding on to 11th place in class. He has Jeremy Hall behind him. That's on the bottom. At the top, you're watching Ed Isingring and Cameron Martineau. This stint, they both have been neck and neck. Of course, that was also part and parcel to that matrix, as you see a little bit of an off there down on the bottom part of the screen. Yeah, that's our leader.
Ryan LeMay had a spin, then going through the hotel hairpin, just lifting into the corner, and the rear stepping away, because the moment he was trying to put the power back down there, Jeremy, of course, a car like the GTP category, or the cars in the GTP category, so to speak, as we focus here with the GT3R still, and Samantha Tan Racing Esports eyeing a move and not quite getting there. We talk about why it looks like such a spaceship and a rocket ship, and why a car looks like a car looks. The profile of the GTPs is of that to keep the car planted down on the floor through high-speed corners, where it gains the grip, where it gains the ability to drive through, and it has that ability to go and use what its talent is to its advantage. What it doesn't have is grip of the aerodynamics at low speed corners. That's where you need mechanical grip, so the slower you go, the easier it is to spin around. And that's why sometimes you hear the expression, I don't know whether you believe in this as well, I crashed because I didn't drive fast enough.
Oh, yeah. And I've seen it. It's not just in GTP. I've seen it happen in areas as low as Formula 4, or what we would know in the States is either USF 2000 or even the old Star Mazda series, where you have enough aerodynamics to get you in trouble, but enough to keep you planted on the ground. Of course, the GTPs also, they have the floor, the under tray, where you have the floor aerodynamics to help keep your car down to the ground. And this battle for second really heating up as well. Martinel's finally closed in. I think he's found that extra oomph to get around Ed, to get to Ed Isingring. Now he's just got to find the extra oomph to pass him as well, which, by the way, if you're wondering who's in the lead with David Mendonca, he's already 11 seconds ahead of this battle. They're still nose to tail, and I think, Jake, we're going to see these two kind of close in through turn one, but Isingring opening up just a little bit there, but not enough to make anything happen.
Yeah, Isingring here, I think, has done a really, really clever job of just prioritizing the exit of these corners, and has been driving with so much poise and potential, and has been sitting down and going, you know what? I am able to get the exit, so if you're going to try and attack me on entry, that's fine, but I can carry better exit speed, which makes it tougher again, but what a run. This is going to be now through the gurney bend here at turn 6, over to the hotel hairpin at turn 7. This will be where do you want to eye up the move. Goes over to the right-hand side, now unlocks the lane, and will this be confirmed under brakes? It will, but Eisenring now tries to attack back for it.
I wonder if there's a little bit of argy-bargy there going into, because I saw a little bit of a juke to the left by Eisenring, but still, Eisenring tried to see if he can get around Martin. Now there is a lap car ahead of him, so that will give Eisenring a chance to see if he can use that car as a pick to get around. The lights are flashing, and of course, it's going to be absolutely close here in Tower Corner as Eisenring, he finds a way as they try to go 3 wide, and that's going to keep Martin now in front for the time being, but still there's that pick that Martin now wanted. Eisenring unfortunately had to let out and has lost so much ground.
Well, George Janellis there was trying to get out of the way of the 2 in front, was going to pull over to the right-hand side and didn't realise that Cameron Martineau was already down his inside, and so had to hold in the middle of the road to try and go through forward for it. But ladies and gentlemen, if you are here and watching and you are very happy with the work that the Porsche Club of America do, we are thrilled to have Princess Cruises continue as our PCA Sim Racing title sponsor out here for 2026. With 17 ships sailing to 345 destinations on 7 continents, world-class cuisine inspired by the places we visit, and the friendliest crew at sea, Princess is ready to welcome you on board. And specifically for PCA members, join the Treffin at Sea 2026 Pacific Wine Country Cruise on the Grand Princess, sailing from Vancouver to Los Angeles from September 19th to 25th. You can go over to the website link on the screen, which is pca.com, pca.princesspartnerships.com, and you can then call also as another option 833-679-2188 to speak to a PCA travel concierge agent. That is 833-679-2188. And on top of that as well, here is a little something here from us over to you from us at PCA. So, leader is currently in at this moment in time, and the driver change will come in to allude to fair share at this moment here. So Kevin Orr will now step in to the 987 machine here, Jeremy, and now is going to set up the second half of this race here for the GTP Pro car that is currently out in front.
Be interesting to see if Kevin Orr can stretch its legs a little further, or if there's going to be a battle afoot between David Boyer and Mike Sachs. You see the Kiernan Racing Blau going into the pits. Mike Sachs coming around Sunset Bend as they work their way around. Of course, now you see Kevin Orr. He's got a black flag. Oh, that's not good.
Oh, that's troublesome. And there for Kevin Orr. I'm looking around at it here. So now the question's going to be, I think it's going to be speeding on pit exit that's gone and got them. So I think they forgot to engage the pit limiter, and that's going to send them back down into the lane.
I had such a huge lead early on, and now it's going to be almost all over for Cat 5 Racing. GTP hands the lead over to Backmarker Motorsports with Mike Sachs behind the wheel. Just absolutely tough there as he tiptoes his way around the circuit now as he's losing time, losing ground, and won't be able to get those Michelins up to the temperature quicker than what he really wanted to. But that's the one rule of racing: when you get in the car, don't mess it up for the driver that you are replacing.
Yep, so now you're looking around. Mike Sachs then hasn't yet made a stop for Backmarker Motorsports. They're going to be down with a very short final stop in this race, you would feel, at what will be 2 stops left in the race. And so Kevin Orr will turn around at that and go, well, what's my gap? 10.5? how much time will you lose then in the pits on transit time only? Because that is going to be a long pit lane launch that is going to try and go through, and it's going to make life incredibly tough.
Yeah, now they're going to have to be racing on hard mode here as you're watching the GT3Rs all coming into the pits as well. There's a lot of GTPs who are coming in, but yeah, that is absolutely a tough pill to swallow for the 987. Of course, he's going to have to come in, and definitely he's going to have to hit that. Oh, almost has a fellow GTP on his backside, but it's going to be at least a pass-through for the 987 coming down into the pits. Rough start. And of course, now the next question is, does Mike Sachs stay out for another lap, or is he going to have to come in and take care of some temperatures? By the way, since we last checked, the temperature has dropped at least 30 degrees Fahrenheit on the track, so that's good for them.
It is 36 degrees Celsius in English out there is what I will use to describe how it's all playing at the moment, and you can see that there as a temperature that has gone through. So it's very much a case of track now is cooling because, again, 4 times acceleration. We are already at, in sim time, 5:30 just gone.
And of course, once the track gets dark, it's going to be absolutely fantastic for a lot of these drivers to really have to catch up to one another. And Kevin Orr with the stop and go, actually stop and hold plus 15. So that really hurts. It could have been a lot. It could have been a lot worse, but also could have been a lot better just having to do the pit in to pit out. Either way, he is now a half a minute behind Mike Sachs, who also has yet to pit. So if you're Kevin Orr at this time, Jake, I have a feeling, you know what, just get those tires up to temp and get out there and run as hard as you can to kind of shorten that gap between you and Backmarker Motorsports for when they come in.
Yes, and so you're trying to make sure that you're giving yourself as much of a platform at the end of this race. And Mike Sachs, I think now is in a really nice position, and so too is Charlie Boyer, who will now be given a role to try and chase down at this moment in time. We weren't able to quite cue it up this first time, but let's cue it again. Here's a little something from us to you from PCA.
Some trips are felt beyond words. No one connects you to the Caribbean like Princess. Princess Cruises, sailing the Caribbean. Book now.
I'll tell you what, I am getting a little bit jealous, Jeremy, with those Princess Cruises. I would absolutely love for both me and my wife to have 7 days of an excursion, seeing as much amazing scenes on the open seas as possible.
You know what? We are actually going on one of those Caribbean cruises in January, so I see that, and I'm getting even more and more excited. We did a Mexican Riviera cruise on a different cruise line. The last time my wife gets off the cruise, she goes, "We're going again." So, a friend of ours who is a cruise director, not cruise director, but like one of those travel agents. He's like, "Here, there's this." I'm like, "All right." So yeah, we're really excited to go on Princess. I cannot wait to see what they have in store for the Caribbean cruise. I'm excited.
So am I, and I'm sure that so many others are out there as we sit ourselves with 1 hour and 23 minutes and 8 seconds remaining here in this second round of the 2026 PCA Porsche Club of America Team Racing Series. Robbie Prescott, currently your leader of the field overall in GT3R for Solpec Precision Racing, having a very strong showing. Again is Solpec, and they've got 12 seconds over Tyler Campbell at this point. So Solpec will look around at this, and Robbie will be very happy with the level of pace that is there, but it's got to be managed, a gap of 11.5 seconds, because it's not a small gap, but yet at the same time it's not a large gap.
No, and I mean, it can be managed, but you have such a good hot shoe right there, Robbie Prescott. But 12 seconds, let's see, we're an hour 22 left to go in this race. Yeah, I think Tyler Campbell and or Jonathan Waltman, who's new into the Kingfisher Imperial Motorsports number 28, can catch up at some point. It's just a matter of eating away at that gap, which, as we all know, is easier said than done. But looking at it, I think it's doable, because now it's a second closer from when we started talking about the gap between Prescott and Campbell right there. We have in the pits the last 10th ITD West HRESS in the 016. Tom Bryce at the wheel right now. We'll see if who goes in next for the 016, and I think Bryce is going to triple stint this.
Well, if Bryce is looking around at a triple stint, then that could be a very interesting point to just keep in note. So everyone's looking around at trying to make sure that their pit stops work as intended, but there is Julian Jones who would be expected to jump in the car. So maybe it's Julian's turn to maybe make that port of call at the next available opportunity. So Samantha Tan in second position, and they are hunting the gap down. That gap tiptoeing in and around 10 to 11 seconds now at this point. But I also want to get a chance to talk Porsche in general, because I find it really interesting with their partnership with Penske out there in the World Endurance Championship. Of course, they have pulled the entry for 2026, so there won't be a factory Porsche, quote unquote, that will be racing at Le Mans for next year, or for this year even. And I want your opinion on it, Jeremy, because this is obviously a case of we're not going to be able to push massively on it, but well, this year, because we've not got the pace to do it. But it's an attempt to say, look, we'll get back in for it next year, and we'll try and do as much as we can with it.
As somebody who is an IMSA stan and has been for quite some time, as part of the former voices of the old ALMS, I like the Penske still staying around with Porsche. I don't like the call that Weissach has made to run the WEC, but I understand it. However, I think that sitting out a year may harm their performance. So we'll get to see here once we get to Imola how everything will stack out. And I think that's about the point where we can sit back and gauge, you know what, maybe Porsche sitting out a year might be a good thing, because now they have all their eggs in the IMSA basket. You know, there's a little bit of a difference between the hypercar and the GTP, but if they can make it work, you know, they're probably the manufacturers that can make it work. However, I do question it, to say the least. We'll see what happens here. But I did scratch my head and say, wait a second, you guys are up at the front. Why are you stepping aside? But stranger things have happened as we watch this battle for 8th in the GT3 R class with Tom Bryce, who just came out of the pits a lap ago, and Jonathan Raybert, who is 2 laps to the worse on those tires. So that's something to think about as well. Not too far away is that's actually a lap car right behind him.
Yeah, that's what's directly behind, and that's making life tough. That's Alder Creek Performance Racing and Tim Taplin that's there. So for Tom Bryce, the car that is behind is Jonathan Raybert of Last 10th Great White, who are in the 014 and about a second. There's your leader, Kevin Orr, and that gap doesn't look as big as it used to be. It is now, as they have crossed through with Backmarker Motorsports making their pit stop, a 4.3 second margin at the front of GTP. Both gaps then at the front with an hour and 18 to go are closing, and this is what, in terms of endurance racing goes here, Jeremy. This is where both you and I, the smiles curl up, and we act like we're just going to giggle a little bit, because we're going to be in for a very good final hour.
Yeah, who would have thought that we'd have a black flag for our class leader? And I guess if you're Kevin Orr, it's like, okay, you can lick your wounds a little bit, but at the same time, you kind of put yourself into this position. So now Charlie Boyer, I'm sure he's going to get on the straightaways. He's going to see the Cat 5 Racing GTP ahead, and that's just going to be like the dog running after the steak. So this is great news for us, great news for Kieran, great news for the GTP class, need to say, and our viewers. Not so much if you're Cat 5 Racing.
Yeah, so Cat 5, understandably, are now going to need to try and get Kevin Orr to start paddling a little bit quicker out there at this point here, with Charlie Boyer looking to give the Kynaran 93 as much chase as possible. So I wouldn't say this race is out of the reach of many of these drivers and teams, but they are just trying to prioritize their finishes at this moment in time. A track that is going to be cooling off quicker and quicker. There is also something to be said out there as well, Jeremy, of a car that is tuned more for the hotter conditions and a car that is tuned more to the cooler conditions, as in the pits right now is Matrix Silver.
Exactly. And now we're getting to the point where the sun's going to go down, and a lot of these teams, a lot of these drivers are going to have to figure out, okay, is my car going to be ready for these cooler conditions, or do I have to make some adjustments next time I'm in the pits, which is going to be a while for a lot of these GTP contenders. However, not if you're, Last 10th Foundry, Max Schnell Eins, and Last 10th Lovebirds. You've got a little bit of time to sit there and figure out, how's my car handling to these cooler conditions? Am I going to have to make some adjustments? Do I have to, lower my air pressure so I have to raise them? So a lot of questions they have to be asked here. GT3R doesn't seem like that these cars will be as temperature sensitive as your prototypes are, so not as many questions to ask through as you see the battle for 5th in GT3R between RSpeed Black, which we really haven't talked too much about, as Greg Strelzoff sitting there in the number 13, one of the front runners in the PCA Club Racing eSIM series. Doing quite well so far for himself in class. Trying to see where he is. That's actually going to be in the club class. Of course, it's out of class, where the number 55 of Matt Siddall is in the GT3R Pro class, a subclass within the GT3R class.
I'm just trying to get a little bit of a look here about what has happened here with Matrix Silver, and I'm not seeing all too much here for Mike Patterson, who was able to get out of the pits and just generally hasn't been able to show as much. Oh, that's interesting. They had a moment then on lap 46, which found them into the barriers on the right-hand side. And I wonder, with the way that they've hit the barriers on the side, then going through Le Mans corner and onto the Oldman Straight, whether Mike Patterson here, Jeremy, has sat down, has got damage, and whatever repairs they've done to it, haven't quite repaired everything.
No, and at some point, when do you make the call to make those repairs? That's the big question that I have to ask.
Well, seeing as they're in there right now, and Mike Patterson's come in and made multiple stops, I wonder if they forgot to check off the fast repair box at the first pit stop.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I didn't think about that as well, but yeah, they're still sitting there. I'm sure they're probably pulling their hair out, because it's not at any point that you can make that repair change either way. As I'm not going to give him that curse, but yeah, no, that's tough luck for Matrix Silver, one of our earlier front runners. Is now they're 3 laps down at this point.
Yeah, so 3 laps down and pretty much out of contention. Here's the scrap for 5th in GT3R in the wonderful, which is now a green for RSpeed Black right now, Porsche style, the classic pig style Porsche livery that is out there on the car. So they've done a tone swap for it with Greg Strelzoff here, but then Matt Siddall here is now hoping that there is going to be a move that can just profiteer them up the place. This is the leading club car up against a pro car that's normally not needing to fight the club cars.
Yeah, so I mean, this is just how much this race has turned on its head, as now you see one of the GTPs diving to the inside to get her. Oh, man, that was an absolute masterclass by both drivers, with the RSpeed Black getting in front of that GTP, as it just goes to show you sometimes the GTP's got to really play ball with these GT3Rs if they want to make a move, as now Strelzoff moves off to the side and lets them by, but still, I think back to my days as a corner marshal, and one of the first races that I did was the American Le Mans Series, the 4-hour race, one of the first ones at Road America. And Bo Barfield showed up to the meeting, and he said the difference between, at that time, GT2 and the LMP1s was 60 miles an hour.
It's a lot. It is an absolute lot. And so when you're getting the understanding of these are the closing speeds under braking, you have a natural affinity of what you think you should leave, and the more that you race, the more you understand how much of a gap that needs to go. But you've also got to remember there, in the sense of what Kynarin was looking for, Jeremy, Charlie Boyer's only 2.6 seconds off the back of the race lead. No one. Oh, there's trouble. And in the wall, it's your leader. It's going to be Dave. Sorry, it's not your leader. It's Dave Douglas, sorry, from Mark Schnell-Heinz. And your leaders were very close to it. Actually, they were right behind when Dave Douglas found himself in the wall, both running a machine that is in the darker variety of it. So Dave Douglas, a slide at turn 3.
Yeah, the Max Schnell-Heinz with so many problems in the first hour of this race. See if we can get a replay. And here he comes around turn 1. It's a little bit of a tight entry there. I'm a little surprised that he didn't go wide. Of course, gets a little tap there from one of the GT3Rs. Comes around turn 2. And turn 3, sometimes it just catches you out. And that's one of the opportunities that happens. The tires just ran a little too fast. And the Photog looking the wrong way. He could have gotten a great view of that 963.
Very much could have done, and ultimately we'll feel like that didn't quite play out the way it was intended. Couldn't get the snapshot that was needed, maybe a shorter lens available. Jonathan Robert, last 10th Great White, looking for a chance to move up the position here on what is labelled right now on the championship board here at this point in time. It's an absolutely wonderful team name. That is the longest one there. It's last 10th ITD West HR is out there as if they almost mashed on the keyboard down at the end. So for the moment, there is last 10th ITD West HR ESR, which sits pretty good in the 016, but for the moment they will look behind and go, yes, we're happy with our placement, but now it's a case of last 10th who find themselves 7th, 8th and 9th.
I'm assuming you've watched Monty Python The Holy Grail, correct?
Yes.
It reminds me of that scene where they see all that calligraphy and the speech just goes, Wait, so it just goes, yeah, it says this,
It's very much a case of, really? How on earth do you go to try and pronounce that? Oh, it just goes, okay, as they go on through. And it's almost like one of these teams that's got this wonderful name that is, like, you spend all the time on the calligraphy of, like, the old medieval scripts that would go through, where they've got, like, a massive T or something to start off what they're doing, and then the rest is just, like, sort of just normal handwriting.
I'll just flash together like this. It's all fine. No harm, no foul. We're all good. But yeah, just a couple crazy thoughts that have kept me out of the good schools when I was going through for my secondary education. Still Tom Bryce. I've got to say this, for him running almost 2 hours of this race, he's still keeping it pretty fresh. I mean, he's only 2 seconds off his fastest time, but then again, we are getting to the point in the day where the track's going to fall off, and now we're going to start to see cooler conditions. So we'll see if these cars can pick up their speed a little bit as the twin last 10th Porsche GT3Rs, I should say, make their way through. They're all Porsches, Jeremy. Come on. There's that battle for 5th once again between Greg Strelzoff and Matzenall in the number 55 ahead of the 13. There is Chad Henson. And my question is, can these two hook up and possibly catch up to Henson? That would be for 4th overall in class. Again, take a look at the orange. That's your club contender. The blue is your GT3R Pro contender. And you take a look at the point standings as well. Our speed with 5th in points with a little bit of a rough outing at Daytona last time out. Matrix Black, though, 4th in points as well. In the GT3R Pro, everybody's just trying to get their way around. And here's something else interesting, Jake, is that qualifying does garner you points. So you get 35 points for the pole, 32, and then they keep going down from there. Race win is 350 points in class. So the max you can get, which a lot of these teams do have, is 385 points.
Yep, so that's why the math is mathing at the moment for a lot of these teams. This battle really important, as too is the gap that has come down for Samantha Tan Racing Esports here. Now, I want to talk about this, as that's a great drive from Matrix Black, heading now through the Fangio S's and over towards Cunningham Corner. That was a gap that at the start of the stint here, as here goes a no attempt that just happened to sit behind. gap between your leaders was 15 seconds at the start of the stint, Jeremy. It's 5.
Yeah, that's absolutely amazing that Prescott has lost that much time because Campbell and Waltman are just on it. Speaking of gaps that have closed down, Romero, let's go to the GTP lead because that has closed in significantly. If you've been watching our tower, this is for overall, and in the club lead is Kevin Orr. That's him, in the lead behind him is the Kiernan Racing Blau with Charlie Boyer right now 2.2 seconds back. Remember, at one point, Cat 5 Racing, before their penalty, had a massive lead in GTP. They lost it, but through pit stops, they were able to get it back. And now I think we're going to have an absolutely fantastic race for overall.
I think we are set up nicely here, and watch, we've already got sunset at this moment in time starting to hit, so it's going to drop underneath at about 7:30 in sim, so that will run effectively, what, 4 hours, 4 hours in the dark to the checkered flag, and 4 hours in the dark here in this race. It's about 1 hour in the dark that they'll be looking at. So very soon we're going to have sunset, but even sooner than that, we'll be looking around and thinking, well, we're going to be night racing, and this is not the sort of circuit in the night that makes it very easy. Talk about how many floodlights you have around this place.
Very few. I'll say this, you know, one thing that was neat about being there for the 12 hours of Sebring a couple of years ago was I told my wife, I go, I don't care what we do, I want to be here at dark, because growing up, you watch the 12 hours of Sebring, you see how dark it gets, you want to see it in person. Yeah, there are very few floodlights. If there's floodlights out there, they're for, you know, away from the track in the infield to try and get you through, or in the corner stations. This is old school racing where the headlights that you have on your car will illuminate what's in front of you for about the next 100 or so yards. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what these drivers can do here in the next hour or so once we get into darkness. Of course, also something to think about. While, yeah, you will have the light shining on you going into Sunset Bend, it's not going to be for as long as you normally would have during an endurance race here.
No, it wouldn't. So you've only got a short amount of time to start adjusting to it, and there is a lot of traffic then it's been going through for your GTP leaders then, as Charlie Boyer is now really on the hunt to say, look, we're going to try and run on through. We're going to try and get what we can out of the pace that is available, and they are right on point trying to get themselves into play. They've got through the traffic, and they've still got 2 seconds to try and chase down at the front. Jonathan Robert here, who's currently 9th overall at this stage, is eyeing up Tom Bryce, who has got this covered at this moment in time, but they'll also look behind because Gombrot Racing are also keeping themselves in the mix through Chris Sherbert.
They're having a great race in and of themselves, so you can throw a blanket on this battle for 8th place in the GT3 R class. That's how close everything is. And of course, look at the GTP slicing and dicing, especially with the slower one down there, drivers right going into Sunset Bend. And this is an absolutely fantastic showing from Romero. Once again, he just does not miss when it comes to those camera shots. And once again, you're seeing what Charlie Boyer can do. He's cut that deficit in half. It's now 1.1 seconds between Kevin Orr and Charlie Boyer as they work on the Samantha Tan 2nd place GT3 R car. Tyler Campbell, I'll tell you what, I know that he was trying to shake off Waltman. He has shaken him off quite nicely as he sets his sights on Robbie Prescott, but Kevin Orr looks in his mirrors and he sees a little bit of that white Kiernan Racing Blau coming up on him. It just keeps getting bigger and bigger each and every lap. Last lap by, what does Kevin Orr do? It's a 51.3 to a 51.1, so ever so slightly Charlie Boyer has answered the call and is really trying to go full throttle now. Both of these drivers have the same amount of time on their tires, so at this point it's just mano a mano.
Yeah, this is hand-to-hand combat that we are seeing at this moment in time, and so it is one versus the other. Kevin Orr, Charlie Boyer out there, Cat 5 against Kynarin, and as it sits in this battleground that we have set and sorted, the clearances are important in terms of how they navigate through. What's also going to be important is how much they've been playing here with the traffic, knowing they are on the same stop strategy. And I argue Charlie's been pushing a bit harder than Kevin Orr over this run. Is Kevin going to get an extra lap's worth of fuel and tyre out there by comparison to what Kynarin are doing with their chase? They've now got to get by your overall leaders, Solpec Precision Racing, who they themselves have to find a way past the very slow Antonio da Silva there for Mark Schnell-Schwei.
Three-Eyed Fishy coming in with a little bit of insight on our chat, saying, May, the curbs are well marked with reflectors. It's surprisingly easy to drive this track at night. So thank you for that. I never realized that, and that's something that maybe as an announcer, broadcaster, I should have looked at when I was there last time. But then again, I kind of was more focused on seeing what I could pick up through the season. But this is why I'm here doing sim racing. Greg Streltsov still trying to hold off Matt Dahl. This time it's 0.2 of a second as the GTP traffic work its way around. Matt tries to pop to the inside, thinks better of it as they work their way around Cunningham once again. And that's something else that we don't talk much about, is how the driver who's chasing who they're trying to pass, sometimes they can get lucky, and when the faster traffic goes by, they can pop out and follow that faster traffic around. And what I think is one of the best racecraft moves is being able to pass that way.
Yes, so if you're able to pass by following the car in front and then using what is there in front of you from that car to allow that ability to pass, I think that's really critical in the way that you look at racecraft and being resourceful with the circuit. Lots of wheel spin there being kicked up off of the exit from both Orr and Boyer as Greg Streltsov here for R Speed Black under a lot of pressure from Matt Sedal into Sunset Bend. Nowhere near close enough to go and make that move, but this really is an understanding of what makes a track like this so tough and so difficult, because this is a circuit which you would feel open, expansive, not much elevation change, has long straights to go and work with. This is a place you'd expect lots of overtaking. Now here comes the... Oh, almost had it there. Caleb Tolar there for Editoran was just on the wrong side of the road, and that just created a bit more trouble out there. You look over to the top as Ben Bulkley comes into pit. Charlie Boyer here is really doing a lot better at using all of the circuit, as now Matt Sedal might have a chance to make a move down into the hotel hairpin, and I think it's going to be just a bit shy.
Yeah, of course, we got just under an hour left. It's still plenty of time to really go for anything as Ben Bulkley comes into the pits once again for his compulsory pit stop. And I think he's just way too soon, unless he can make it stretch to run the rest of the race, as that battle for the lead in GTP really heats up. It's 0.8 of a second, and one of the last 10th Porsches holding up Kevin Orr. This is exactly what he didn't want as he tries to shove his way to the inside through turn number 5, and they're still side by side. This is going to give Charlie Boyer a chance to close in through the hairpin, as now they're 0.2 of a second apart. Does Boyer have enough? He's going to look to the inside. I don't think he's going to have it, but these two caught traffic at the wrong time for Orr, the right time for Boyer.
Well, you're now there, and now the pressure is direct then for Kevin Orr. Lots of traffic in front, and having to sit on it here, and might have to through Cunningham and all the way along Collier Corner here, this long left-hand bend to try and get the drive coming off of the exit. It's going to clear one in Chris Sherburn then. So that's the jump. You now see the headlights on and properly on out there as they reflect on the surface of the circuit. So we are very much into the final hour's worth of racing, and critically with that final hour, you are now starting to turn around and see that you are all in on trying to get as much as you can for it. Boyer needing to set up the run here with Tom Bryce. Traffic gives, traffic takes away, and now it also helps Chris Sherburn, who's got a run here on Jonathan Robert.
So plenty going on right now as you're watching Kevin Orr open up that gap just a little bit more. Again, you're starting to see the darkness fall over this historic road course. You saw some of the reflectors on the side strips, and look at that. 31 degrees Celsius is the track temperature, 26 degrees. The ambient temperature, so equates to 79 Fahrenheit air temp, 88-degree surface temp. Still some dry conditions, a little windy out there, but then again, once we get that sun down, it's going to cool things off just a little bit more, which would be great for the tires and the engines. So we've got a couple of great battles going on right now. Of course, obviously, we've got this battle for the lead that we're watching in the GTP class, a handful of battles in GT3R. You've got the battle for fifth overall between Greg Strelzoff and Mansenal in fifth place. Then you go down to 8th place, where you've got Tom Bryce in the last 10th ITD West HR Air. Sitting there behind him is his teammate Jonathan Raybear, as you mentioned, and Chris Sherburne in 10th place. Then you go to 12th. You've got Motorsports with Joseph Evers behind the wheel and Adam Gerling in the 495 Chroma Motorsports White, 1.7 seconds. So that gap keeps, it's like an accordion. It keeps growing, keeps shrinking. So something to watch out for, but still a handful of positions to go. And I take a look at Matrix Silver. I'm wondering, Jake, if Mike Patterson's troubles, yeah, he may not have clicked the fast repair, but if that fast repair just wasn't enough to make the repairs they need, because he's still sitting in the pits 12 seconds later. Of course, also look at the time. They had to take that tow back to the pits.
Yeah, it's a real shame to see what's happened to them. They were challenging so high up the order. Then in the early goings, it looked like they were going to be one of those teams that was going to be in title material. Now, you see it here lined up around the circuit. The Americanism of calling it what it is a reflector. The Anglicanism of what you can say of what it is around the side of the circuits there in various areas are cat's eyes.
Cat's eyes. I've never heard of it called that. But then again, you know, spent 95% of my time in the United States. I got to remember that for when I go over to Europe here in just a couple of weeks' time. But either way, you still see the edges of the racetrack, which is absolutely fantastic. And once we get, I would say within the next 10, 15 minutes of real life time, when it gets really dark, that's where you're going to see that. And I keep forgetting, too, that the Advent Health bridge right there, that is also illuminated. So the bridges are illuminated as well. Gives you just a little bit more daylight, but at the same time, it's not that much. Also, something to think about, which I wish iRacing would have added here, is seeing the planes go in and out. When I was working Porsche Sprint Challenge a couple of years ago with our friends Joe Peak and Ryan Marine, it was neat from the booth because sometimes you could see the tail of a plane, you know, just up to speed, getting ready to take off, and then, you know, a couple seconds later, you'd see it take off in the distance. I think hopefully that's something they're working on next too.
I'm sure that will be something where they're looking at every possible detail to give the true, authentic Sebring experience out there for anyone who is going and pushing for it. But right now, the push is on in GTP, with Kevin Orr able to just about keep at about a second's length here. Charlie Boyer, who is doing everything he can to get that gap to just creep on down as the night begins to set in, and into the pit comes Ken Eskridge for what should be, with the way that they've been driving out there today here, Jeremy, their final stop of the race over at last 10th in 5th.
And that's interesting. We've seen them really extend their stints. This is their second pit stop of the race. Scheduled for 98 laps, by the way. We're still time certain at 3 hours. I think they can make it the whole way with the pace that they're running. Their fastest lap was a 54.232. And, of course, last time by, a pit in, obviously, 209.291. So we'll see if Ken stays in the car. This has got to be an error with iRacing, because I see right now the wet tire setting being thrown onto the 012. That's got to be an error. It can't be other way, because it's absolutely bone dry here.
Well, just because it's dry doesn't mean you can't put it on.
Yes, I agree. But at the same time, after about 2 laps, it's going to feel, you know, as bumpy as a dirt road out there.
It very much will. I'm not saying it's the correct decision by any stretch of the imagination. I'm just saying it's possible, and a lot of things are possible out there when they go. Charlie Boyer struggling there through the middle sector to hold the pace of Kevin Orr, and this is what we're seeing. Gets to the all-critical hotel hairpin close, but then struggling through some of the 90-degree corners to get the pull out. So there's not masses of amounts of dirty air, but there's clearly enough, and maybe needing that gaggle in front to help. Chris Braun of Matt Sedal and as well of Greg Streltsov there. That is last 10th New England, the 013 team. They have caught the back then of Matrix and R-Speed.
That's about that time, so we'll see how these two battle one another as Eskridge, who must have been listening to the broadcast because they actually switched to dries. A minute 22 later, they are out of the pits, so that kind of hurt them. 3 laps down in arrears, and now you see Orr and Boyer snaking their way around that lap traffic once again with Eskridge letting the two go by. But still, the big question is, when will they catch a GT3R traffic, which should be any second now, and how long will it be for them to get around all 3 of these cars, and who are really running their own race? And the first car that's going to come across is that last 10th New England of Chris Braun in the 013. And yeah, this is what's fun about endurance racing, Jake. You have these opportunities where the faster traffic, they're going to insert themselves into the slower class battles, and it's going to affect all 3 of these drivers at some point. By the way, you've got another car a little bit more up the road as well. So this is great. 50 minutes left to go, and we've got the battle for the GTP and overall lead catching into this GT3 traffic, having their own race.
So now where are you going to find the chance to jump on through? Charlie Boyer is a lot more cautious about it. Slow car over on the right-hand side is Randy Teague. There for Chroma Motorsports Black, the challenger driver, letting everybody find a way through. And just Kevin Orr is having a lot easier of a time of picking and choosing when to go for these moves compared to Charlie Boyer at Kynaran. I think there is a lot more trepidation and insecurity about the way to go through from Charlie Boyer. I think it's really telling. What was also telling is Samantha Tan, Racing Esports, that gap's now 3.2 seconds.
Yeah, so there's still plenty of time to really sort everything out as Boyer loses a little bit of ground because really Orr, I would say he was a surgeon back there trying to make sure that not only was he able to safely get around the GT3R traffic, but was able to keep Boyer at more than an arm's length distance behind him. So well done on that, but it seems like Boyer's still quick on pace when he's not dealing with lap traffic. So I can see why Boyer still is, kind of trepidatious with some of these passes, because he knows that he's got something there as they work their way around Chad Henson now. At least Orr does. Boyer still needs to close in on that, but we'll see what happens during the pit stop. Both of those drivers running 20-lap old tires. If I'm Kevin Orr or Charlie Boyer, if one pits, I'm staying out for another lap or 2.
I'd try to, and it will be dependent, I think, on the fuel values that they're both working with. So if one's in, one's out, one's out, one's in. But I would also be keeping a very firm eye on, have you saved yourself enough margin out there to afford that? Or are you going to have to try and make this one a battle of pit crews between the 987 and the 93? Out there in this wonderful category of Porsche 963 GTPs that work on through, going along the Ullman Straight now in what will be dusk to pitch black night conditions here. And the drive, I think, is going to be really telling, as Greg Streltsov, who is currently in 5th position, holding this 3-car train at this moment in time, is also making a run over towards this next section of track, Sunset Bend, and just holding the line quite nicely here. You can see Matt Sedal is probably getting a little bit impatient at this stage.
Yeah, he really is. I've got to say this, though. what I love about the nighttime is we finally, as an announcer, we get to see where these cars are in class, because the digital boards that are on the front windshields of these GT3Rs and on the sides of the GTPs, they are finally illuminated enough to where we can finally go, okay, well, that's fifth place, go to timing. And oh yeah, that's Greg Strelzoff who's sitting there in fifth place. But yeah, Strelzoff doing a great job of that R-Speed black number 13 to really hold things off. And can I just make this point here? It should be R-Speed green, because there's nothing black about that GT3R except for the eyebrow strip up there on top of the windshield. So yeah, I guess semantics. I could be a little picky right now, I guess, right?
I think you're going to be very, very cross with Jota then in the world of what's going to differentiate teams versus teams out there if you're going to be down that line.
Well, and that's exactly why I don't commentate on WEC, but that's neither here nor there. It's still a goal to get down there, but look at this. Look at how close you see Sedal goes. He tries to look to the outside of Tower Tor. Now he's going to move to the inside. Strelzoff fades over to the right to block, I should say, as they work their way around Bishop, now setting up for Le Mans. And this is a race for fifth place. It's an out-of-class race as well, as you see Matrix Black in the Pro Class, R-Speed Black in the Club Class for GT3R, and still no change of position, but you do have Chet Henson losing a little bit of ground. Of course, that has to be part and parcel to some lap traffic that he's been encountering the past couple of laps.
Yes, so having that pace just slowly starting to hurt is going to allow more to reel in. But again, Matt Sedal can't get close enough to cover. Oren Boyer back down to a second. 2.5 now in GT3R. One stop still left to go, but there aren't as many stops out there as you get yourself ready here with us as well, and with the Porsche Club of America, because we are thrilled to have the Princess Cruises continue as our PCA sim racing title sponsor for 2026. With 17 ships sailing to 345 destinations on 7 continents, world-class cuisine inspired by the places we visit, and the friendliest crew at sea, Princess is ready to welcome you on board. And specifically for PCA, Porsche Club of America members, you can join the Treffin at Sea 2026 Pacific Wine Country Cruise on the Grand Princess, sailing from Vancouver to Los Angeles, September 19th to 25th. You can go to the website link on the screen, pca.princesspartnerships.com, or call 833-679-2188 to speak to a PCA travel concierge agent. That's 833-679-2188. 2/10 at the front of GTP. Kai Naron are trying to eye this up with 45 minutes to go, and through Sunset Bend, they are not going to get the drive off the exit.
Of course, they also have a GT3R up ahead. Oh, look at the speed that they have going into turn 1 as Kevin Orr once again catches it at the wrong time. He's able to get inside the GT3R, but that closes in Boyer. Look at those brakes glow, though, on those GT3Rs. And, of course, that is Strelzoff, who's trying to hold off Matt Sedal once again, but we're still watching this battle for the lead overall and in GTP, especially in the GTP club class. You see the orange numbers there signifying that club class as they work their way around. No pro class drivers here this weekend as Cat 5 Racing GTP going into that club class, as we see on our screen. They ran the pro class last time out and decided to dip down into the club class this weekend. Half second separates Orr from Boyer, heading into Cunningham once again. And oh man, look at the glowing brakes on. You can see that on Kevin Orr's number 987. And watch it again as he goes through the corner. They just glow so bright, especially with how dark the facility is. And of course, you see the cat eyes or reflectors, depending on what you like to call them. But now Orr's able to stretch his legs to about a 1 second gap, so he can breathe a little easier. Boyer, not so much.
No, and we are now seeing pit stops, which will include your overall leader, Robbie Prescott, who is down in there. First chance to say with Last Tenths Racing right now that RaceSpotTV's very own JR Gregory is just in front of him, down on pit lane at this moment in time, as this will be the last chance to get some pit stops in. Tyler Campbell has stayed out longer as those brakes glow on the Porsche 963s. No shocks to see David Mendonca get back in the car. That's a must-make switch then for the team over at Solpec if they want to win this race outright with pace. Also Jonathan Waltman in, but the brakes that are glowing out there on the Porsche 963, Jeremy, they are AP Racing carbon brakes. They are 380 by 365 mil with that AP monoblock, and they got 6 piston calipers out there. It is a real crunch, the brake, which really creates that friction and creates the glow.
You know, I like working on my own cars, and I'm lucky that all my cars have 1 piston. I'd hate to have 6 times the pistons to have to crunch in to try and get those back in as I put the pads in. But, man, that's absolutely fantastic. I absolutely love when you see those carbon brakes just glow, just boom, right in your face right there as Strelzoff comes into the pits from 7th. Waltman, he actually follows Waltman into the pits at this time. So Imperial and R-Speed trying to get in there and run their final pit stop of the race. Mendonca, as you mentioned, basically in there to finish the race. Now the question is, can Tyler Campbell short pit that number 38 and try and get ahead of Mendonca? Or, in my opinion, I just think Mendonca is too good, too fast, and that Solpec Precision Racing number 919.
So, how are you going to sit down and really ratchet through this 7-speed manual gearbox, which is an X-Track P1359? How are you going to be able to get yourself up through the order and do what you need to? In is Tyler Campbell, and Solpec have to get right up to speed straight away, and they've got to try and stave off the pressure that Tyler Campbell will be putting on them. Remember, this tyre will take about 3 laps to get up to a racing temperature. That's going to be critical here for Tyler Campbell, who's trying to overcut by a lap.
So that's the big question. Can Tyler Campbell, now Cameron Martin now, get ahead of the Solpec Precision Racing 919? They are on their marks. Every GT3R has done a low 30-second pit stop. And, of course, we'll see what happens. 21 seconds at times still going up. And I think it's going to be an actual full-service pit stop for Martin now. So it will be a matter of time before Mendonca goes back into the lead overall. Yep, there it is, 33.1, decent pit stop, as now we'll see where is Mendonca. It's going to be close as we see Mendonca make his way out. There goes Martin now out front, but can he get the tires warmed up just in time? That's about a 1.1 second gap, but Mendonca quickly closing in, heading towards turn number 3, and Mendonca might be able to catch him here at the hairpin. Martin now, at this point with the colder tires, all he can do is watch. I think it's going to be before this. There's a little bit of a rub there going through Big Bend. Nose to tail they come. Mendonca now side by side heading into the hairpin, and it's going to be Mendonca for the lead for the time being. But here's the thing, Martinell's not going to make it easy as Mendonca takes the lead.
Wait, that's close. That was so close there, front to rear. Martineau was everywhere on the brakes. David Mendonca critically gets the clearance, but how quickly can Cameron Martineau wake up those tires?
He's going to have to do it really quickly. If he had the tire warmers, which are not allowed in most sports car series, he would have been able to keep out front and give it to Mendonca a lot harder than he really had been. But let's be real here. He's 9/10 of a second behind Mendonca, so one slip up, and that could be it, your battle for the overall lead. And Kevin Orr gets a black flag! He gets a second black flag!
That's speeding on pit entry. Say goodbye to 40 seconds. The pressure was telling, and the question will now be asked. Charlie Boyer was all over him like a rash, and was there any push there into pit lane over the line? The answer was no, there wasn't. Charlie Boyer was just underneath. He'll hand the car over to David Boyer. I don't think they'll know there's a penalty there. They'll just drive away and realise, as they will laugh, quote-unquote, to the bank, that Kevin Orr is going to be stationary, and quite simply put, he's got himself a Porsche 963 scuttled by comparison.
Talk about the shift in dynamic. If you're Boyer, you're going to get out first, and there he goes as the Kiernan Racing Blau team gets out front and now takes the top portion of the tower. What a change in events. We thought that Kevin Orr could have withheld the pressure, but coming into the pits, it just proved to be too much as Orr sits and waits. He may have to come out behind some of the GT3Rs. They'll come out behind a couple of them. We'll see if they decide to leave that pit speed limiter on once again. Brad Dunn is out. Kevin Orr, it's just so long and such a rough penalty for having to come in late. Now he's told that he is able to go, and the driver who is doing his best defense ahead of Boyer has to be kicking himself, as now he's 31 seconds in arrears to Kiernan Racing Blau.
That is the biggest thing in a tale for Kevin Orr and Cat 5 Racing GTP. They will look around at this and go, I really wanted to have that chance of winning this race, and ultimately it will go awry at the worst possible opportunity there. A look then as the lights flash on and off. There as we work by with our wonderful in the curb camera that is set out for us, but 34 seconds, they're relying on a miracle now with 36 minutes to go to chase it down. All the while, 1 second the gap for Martineau to David Mendonca, and they've had a lot of traffic to try and pivot on through, and I think that has been quite telling. Into the pits then for the final time, then from Sport is Caleb Tolar.
And it has been quite telling. Of course, Tolar, the 7-Eleven, haven't talked much about him or the team. They have their fair share of problems, but either way, we'll see what they can do here in the GT3R Sport. First race of the season for that 7-Eleven, as they weren't able to show up at Daytona. But, man, what could have been for Kevin Orr? I just keep thinking about it, as Tom Bryce is going to have to come in here in just a little bit. He's 22 laps. Everybody else out there has pitted around him. Let's see here. Yeah, he's about one of the last cars to have to pit in the GT3R with 35 minutes left. Milo get in, get that pit stop done, and just go full throttle on the race. Caleb Tolar still in pit road over a minute, so twice as long as a normal pit stop. I think he's got to fix some sort of damage once again, as Sherburne and J.R. Gregory battling for 10th overall in the GT3R class. The last 10th Racing 011 being led by J.R. Gregory. You see them side by side going through Cunningham and now setting up for the Collier corner into Tower corner, as last 10th Racing closes in also on last 10th Great White with Jonathan Raybert behind the wheel. He's been behind the wheel a lot this race as well.
Yeah, so Jonathan Gregory finding himself in a scrap. Chris Sherburne, who's been looking around at that is a position change. They will go aggressive now down on in, and they will hope for a change. There has been a change for the race lead, and Solpex immediately on the radio for a little look at what they've had to do. So they have had themselves off the push out of line, as they were scrapping down in through some of the corners, and we'll find that Cameron Martineau has got the race lead. And in terms of where it's happened, I think Mendonca has had his moment through 3, 4 and into 5. There was a stopped car of Steve Kamat of Missile Motors, and Mendonca now has to hunt a gap down with potentially damage on the front.
Well, how the turntables, as Martineau gets gifted the lead in the Samantha Tan Racing Esports number 38. Meanwhile, you're watching this battle for 9th as J.R. Gregory's made his way into that 9th place, but Raybert still tight on the back of his teammate in the last 10th Racing Great White. Gone Broke Racing the 05, Chris Sherburne sitting 0.7 of a second behind that. And really, this is going to be their own battle because they've got plenty of time. Steve Komatz also into the pits. He gets a black flag, so I think he probably came too fast entering, or gets a black flag for some sort of other transgression, but Gregory goes a little wide in the hairpin. Let's take a look at what happened to Antonio da Silva, and yeah, that's just going to happen right there as he goes off in turn number 2. Don't see where your GT3R then leader comes around, but let's see if we can get a replay there. And Gregory opening up that gap ever so slightly as they look around and looking at the lap times between Samantha Tan and Solpek. I'm wondering if Mendonca can. I was going to say, yeah, looks like he capped. Go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, so I would look at the damage on the front of David Mendonca's Porsche GT3R right now, and that tells you all you need to know about where the race is going to lie for them as they will try desperately to fight. It is a car that is missing the front clip at this moment here and is a little bit more exposed by comparison. I think at this stage here, that 919 is one that's not going to be too pleased. We're on the car just in front, just behind it at the moment on the battle for 10th position. But for David Mendonca right now, it is a car that is pushed in, and you can see it there here as we go through into a tiny bit of light. That tells you all you need to know.
Yeah, and of course, that's where all the cooling for the engine is right there. So that's something they've got to watch out for. They're not going to have peak performance as they're running 0.8 of a second slower than Martin now, and they're down to 3.5 seconds behind the overall GT3R and Pro Class leaders. Wallman may not be able to catch up to him in the next 30 minutes or so, but still, it's a decent gap to where something bigger happens to Mendonca. Wallman and the Imperial Motorsports Kingfisher team might have an opportunity to play runner-up and maybe play a little bit of spoiler, but what a gift that Cameron Martineau got in the Samantha Tan Racing Esports number 38. As Solpek, your leader there in GT3 Pro, Samantha Tan, running their first race of the season as well.
Yeah, and so what a perfect way to kickstart your season out there. You're on one less race than everybody else, so you're fighting from a back foot perspective, and maybe you are stage hunting by comparison. So that is still a really good drive and result that we are seeing out here from Samantha Tan Esports, and we are taking a look at Samantha Tan Racing Esports and seeing that it's about getting the consistency level through. Little bit of luck, but that middle stint, you look around, they've got 2 drivers who can go out there and challenge a team like Solpek at the very top end.
Exactly, and this is going to be a huge confidence boost for Samantha Tan Racing, because now they know that they went toe-to-toe with Solpek, and some people may say, well, that's because Solpek had an error, but you got to take a look at this. Cameron Martineau, even when he did get out of the pits, he wasn't that far away from Mendonca at all. Mendonca is one of the 4 runners in all of the road course part of sim racing. I almost wish he was in our Monday evening series, because I'd love to see what Mendonca can do for the field up and down. But either way, I think if you're watching this, if you're a team manager, granted, there's nothing against Samantha Tan, but if you're a team manager of a Solpek or maybe even a WSR, Team Falcon or something like that, you're watching what Martineau's doing. He's now stretching away from Mendonca. I would give him a look here in the next couple of years of maybe this is a driver we want to add to our roster.
Yeah, he looks like the sort of talent that can go places here in sim racing, and there are guys that he's up there with. I look at people like Leo Ovcharov, for example, that he's a very good comparable comparison to out there, who could be a driver that would also fit the same mold out there if he wasn't quite what you were looking for there. But a wonderful team right now that's proving they've got a lot of great pace. I also want to focus on what's going on 4th and 5th in your GT3R field, because Chris Braun here is proving that he is muscling that Porsche into contention. Imperial Motorsports have 3rd and 4th on lock at the moment, but that lock can be broken by a very nice skeleton key that is currently shaped in last 10th image at this moment in time.
Yeah, that's an absolutely fantastic point there for fourth place, and still Komatz's black flag still, as you see on the left-hand side of your screen, not been wiped away. George Janellis also getting a black flag in the Chroma Motorsports Black. So my thought is, I think he probably was too fast. Oh yeah, too fast exiting at the very least, as his delta time is 56. Oh, no, maybe not. Maybe we'll figure that out here later. But either way, two black flags hanging in the balance in GT3R. Back to this battle as you see Imperial Motorsports having to deal with just a little bit of traffic here with last 10th New England. And Chris Braun really showing his pace here as he is running about the same time, if not a little bit faster than Chad Henson in that 4:53. We saw Chad at the front almost challenging Solpeck, but now I think things are starting to go the way of last 10th New England, where they had just a little bit better nighttime setup, to say the least.
Well, I look around at the way that they were trying to get around then with, that was Chris Costis from Backmarker Motorsports, and they had to wait a long time to get by Chad Henson, who commanded the road and said, until you've got drive to get by me, you're not getting by me. And that is the sign of a driver who knows how to use all the traffic around out there, Jeremy, to basically buy an extra bit of time out there. Didn't move, said, responsibility's yours, make the pass clean.
Exactly, and that is the key here of Porsche Porsche's club racing, whether it's in the sim or real life. They focus on clean racing. And if you touch somebody, at least on the club side, I remember it was a very strict penalty. If it was just, it doesn't matter if it was incidental or on purpose, it was very strict. So, you know, they take clean racing seriously here in PCA, as once again, you see Braun try to look to the inside there of Henson. Not going to make it happen, a little too far away. 26 minutes left to go in this race. And we've seen some great storylines up and down the field, but a lot of it has to deal in the GT3R class with all the passes that have been made and all the great battles that we've seen. But Imperial Motorsports in last 10th, they've always seemed to find each other at some point during this race. And right now it's one of those things where you're going to see these two go wire to tooth and nail, I should say, all the way to the end. Komatz in for his black flag. Let's see what happened to Chris Sherburne, sitting there in 11th place, coming off, and yep, just has that nose pointed towards the exit of turn number 11. Of course, that's actually not a replay. That is a battle for 10th overall and in 10th overall in GT3R.
Yeah, so you got 11th then on the bottom of your screen, or the last spot inside the top 10. On the top of your screen, that battle that continues on for 4th place. Both will include a last 10th car out there as we focus then with Great White and Gone Broke Racing on the bottom. We just moved back over to the battle on for Imperial Motorsports, and they are now having to deal with David Boyer behind, your overall leader, with 24.5 minutes to go in this race, trying to go and find this opportunity. But for those who are looking at what is next for you in terms of where you want to jet set, you can jet set and go have a relaxing time with this.
Some trips are felt beyond words. No one connects you to the Pacific Coast like Princess. Princess Cruises. Book now.
Fantastic stuff. And so now they sit 24 minutes and 13 seconds to go here from the Sebring International Raceway. We are into the night very firmly here, as in-sim time has ticked already to nearly 9:45 out there on this 4X acceleration that has now started to push. So you are looking at David Boyer now holding a chance here to say, look, 36 seconds, a massive lead out there at the front. Car's still to lap though, but you have to keep the pace up. But you also don't want to do anything silly.
No, you don't want to do anything silly, and normally you wouldn't want to do it on regular conditions. Now you're adding in the darkness, so definitely don't want to make a mess, and now we're still at 99 laps predicted, so last pit stops well done and dusted out of the way for most of these teams. I wouldn't be surprised to see last 10th Foundry, Mach Schnell 1, and last 10th Lovebird. Well, actually, those are the only two teams I think will be probably coming into the pits at any point, or though they may make it stretch. It's going to be cups of fuel and drops of energy left on those 963s down the final stretch of this race. Just under 23 minutes left to go, but still lots left to play for in spite of so many drivers really keeping up. There's your leader, David Boyer, in the Kiernan Racing Blau. And what a day that they've had sitting back there, trailing Cat 5 Racing GTP. Two mistakes by Kevin Orr have cost Cat 5 Racing their lead. And there's the battle for 5th place in GT3R. Actually, we'll call that 4th place as Chris Braun finally leapfrogging Chad Henson there. Not too far away from there is the Matrix Black number 55 of Matt Sedals. He's gotten away from Greg Strelzoff. But still, you take a look at this battle for 4th, Jake. Henson and Braun going tooth and nail the whole time by. And, of course, now Matt Sedal has a black flag. What happened here as he will have to come into the pits?
Now, I want to just note that there is a 25x incident point limit in this race, and I think Matt Sedal has just tripped over the top of it.
That's very true. I mean, the team, Matrix Black, both, Matrix not having a good day all in all. Now with that black flag, of course, Matrix Silver basically done from the race at 29. They were up at the front with their sister car in the 55, but now it's going to be pretty much game over, and Sedal and the Matrix Black team will have to go at least one lap down. So they'll be fighting back there with the likes possibly of, J.R. Gregory, Jonathan Raybert, Chris Sherburne, Brad Dunn. So some very, very fast drivers that you see near the back of the pack. And what a tough spot for Sedal. Of course, with all of the wideness of this circuit, Jake, no surprise, he probably just put a tire off here and there.
Yeah, really, really tough scenario out there if the tyres are starting to falter then in the late stages. So you're just looking to give yourself as much room as you can. In comes Matt Sedal, and any hopes then of a top run towards the end of this race are going to be dashed here with this drive-through penalty that will come on through. Now, critically on this, there is no disqualification limit, so it's just a case of if you hit 25, it's a drive-through penalty, and you have got to be very, very alert to the fact that this can be as tough can be for Matt Sedal. So knowing that now off the exit with 2020 left on the clock, it is now a case of get back into rhythm, find a chance. And so now I am going to sit down and look at this and go, right, 6th place for a team that was pretty much all conquering in this last season, Jeremy. This is, I would say, the crash down back to earth.
No, it really is. And look, you've got 3 other races to have to worry about here at 3 very good endurance racing facilities as this battle for 10th really looking pretty good between Raybert and Sherburne here for last 10th and Gone Broke Racing. Yeah, I mean, I'm taking a look at the point standings for Matrix Black, with them 4th in the GT3R Pro at Daytona. They're going to have a bigger hole to climb now because of how much further back that they've fallen in GT3R. They've got Strelzoff ahead of them, but it's a 9-second gap between the two. So now Sedal needs to sit back and say, okay, I cannot mess up for these next 20 minutes or so, because even more of these incident points, it's going to be a problem. Now, let's talk about incident points, because we really didn't get into the nuts and bolts of that. It's a varying level of degree for incident points. Sometimes you can get a 0 incident point, a 1 incident point, something minor, 2 incidents, 3 incidents, which is rare, but the 4 incident points, that's the worst one. That's contact with another car or something major. And a lot of these drivers need to keep those incident points on the low because they also affect your I rating. They affect your safety rating at the same time. And like some series, unlike PCA, they actually have an incident limit where you hit, okay, say 17 incident points, you have a drive-through. You hit 10 more than that, we're just pulling you off the racetrack. So these drivers are lucky where, you know, they don't necessarily have to worry about being disqualified, but incident points come from what you're doing and what other people do to you. So it could be none of your own fault, and you just end up with a whole bunch of incident points. And still, watch this battle for fourth between Henson and Braun. Absolutely tantalizing between these two, as Braun thought he had a little bit of pip up front, but Henson still getting back up front in that Imperial Motorsports number 453.
Yeah, you're really looking now here at last 10 New England. They are ratcheting up the pressure on Chad Henson, but they haven't really got to any position yet where they can have a massive lunge down the inside, a throw to go and make a move out there on circuit. This has been tough in terms of finding the move. And I think that as they have been hoping that this race is setting themselves up for the end of this race, and it's a fourth or a fifth, and the points are going to be important for them as they go. So, for example, just looking at where they were from the championship, then at the season opener back in January, Imperial Motorsports, or this Imperial Motorsports car in front, the 453, they finished second out there in the season opener. You look around to that last 10th racing car, New England, they were 7th. So this is what I would call a contrasting fortunes race, where one team's come down and another team has gone straight back up by comparison.
Yeah, that's a very good way of looking at it. We've had a couple of those races up and down the field. By the way, speaking of contrasting fortunes, Mendonca's now 12 seconds, almost 13 seconds behind Martin now. So that contact that we mentioned earlier has hurt that GT3R more than we really thought. But right now, Henson and Braun, because they're battling each other, they're not close enough to even think about catching up to either Waltman or Mendonca. So if I'm Mendonca, I'm just saving it. Just saving the rest of my race. I don't have to worry about battling anybody else unless Henson and Braun and Waltman decide that, you know what, maybe we do want to catch up and try and, you know, hit the bottle, as the cool kids like to say. But either way, Henson and Braun, this is probably the battle of the race right now outside of the Ray-Bear-Sherburne battle. And GT3R, GTP, done and dusted for now, as everybody there has kind of settled into the end part of their race. But either way, the battle of the CH first names, I should say, really looking pretty good, as they're going to have to deal with some lap traffic in just a little bit, so it's going to get a little spicy. See if Braun can use some of those lap traffic as a pick to get around Henson.
Yeah, and so it's all about finding it here. This is your leader in GTP, David Boyer, who is just managing himself at this stage of the race and proving that he's got the ability to go and get the drive over the course of this season. Now, when you sit down and understand this season, we're in March, it's already round 2. You've not got another round for another couple of months to deal with, but it's such a short championship in terms of number of races you'll have to go and battle with. I'd turn around and look and see at what David Boyer has done and gone, right, I've wrested control and I've got momentum, not just now, but through April and into May. And you just take that confidence and responsibility.
Well, you know, they got maximum points last time out at Daytona with the pole and race win. They're going for 2 in a row. Not of perfect points, but still 2 in a row in terms of winning races. So that is absolutely huge. Now, last 10th Foundry sitting, third right now in class. They're going to have at least 300 points to their name. I can't remember where exactly. I believe they may have qualified third as well, so that's an extra 330 points to go on to their 352 points. So Boyer taking this Kieran Racing Blau team further up to the front than was already there.
Yep, so they are able to jump even further beyond in terms of where they have been looking, what they have been hoping to understand over the course of a season. And quite honestly, the reality of the way they've driven has been magnificent. And you ultimately have to go and say this has been a wonderful drive out there in terms of the run and the effort that has been put forward. So I don't think you can really argue too much about how wonderful of a go that this has been. I am probably saying right now that if you're a team like Carnarvon, this is the moment that you turn around and go, yeah, we're top. And it's not just a top of class, it's a we are top, and that will be a smile twice as wide.
Well, of course, also, I think we were deprived of what could have been an absolutely epic finish with Kevin Orr's double black flags. We saw how good the Cat 5 Racing GTP was throughout the first couple of stints, and that second black flag, that was just a death knell for that team. And look, I think that Boyer would have found a way to get around but at the same time, I think that these two cars would have put on an absolute banger of a finish. And of course, now Boyer, because he's so far out in front, really he could just take his time and not have to push 10/10s, whereas or he's running about a second off at his fastest lap time, and that's even through dealing through all that traffic. So if you're Cat 5 Racing, yeah, you're upset that in one hand, you got a couple of black flags at the hand of one driver who's having some pit issues, but at the other hand, you saw that driver go tooth and nail with the points leader in your class, and you think, well, you know what, 6 in one half dozen in the other. We'll address the black flag stuff, but we have a stout lineup that we can take into Watkins Glen in June and actually defend.
Jeremy, I look at Solpec here. I don't think they're safe for second. The gap is 17 seconds. There is 12 minutes just under left to go. And Jonathan Waltman just took 5 seconds out of them on the last lap.
Yeah, I think Mendonca has bigger problems than just that the radiator. I think that car might be limping home. It might be a struggle for them just to finish this darn race. So as they work their way around the corner, it's going to be an interesting question of when, not if, Waltman comes around and passes Alexa Mendonca. When was the last time you and I have sat here, called a sports car race where Mendonca's been a part and said, well, Mendonca's in trouble, he may lose another position?
It's not often. I've seen it in an MX-5 before where there's been trouble for David Mendonca, but that was an elite field of MX-5 drivers, which had the likes of Adnan Grozdanic, for example, who was part of the Prodigy Racing League out there. There's the look at, say, the likes of drivers who are in there, like Nicholas Goebel, who was in there, Ade Koba for Simify Esports. I think that's the only time I've seen David Mendonca really struggle, but it's not really his fault. He just found the wrong car at the wrong time. The damage on the front is clearly affecting the pace that's there. I think they've staved off a little bit at that time. They're only 2 seconds slower on that last go around, which will certainly help. But Jeremy, how do you think they're going to look now at this, saying, are we getting out with a second and we're happy, moving over when we consider it's Watkins Glen, which could be even more unpredictable at round 3?
I think you go back, lick your wounds, and come out with a better plan to stay out front. But again, as you and I both know, the best laid plans sometimes just aren't made, because Mendonca had that lead and just made contact with another driver. Also, that was in the dark. So you're going to see a lot of things at Watkins Glen, but that is a very old school circuit with blind corners, which are extremely fast. And of course, Armco, they always love to come out and bite at certain areas. So Mendonca now, he is 17 seconds to the good. Let's see what he does this next time by. He's lost 2 seconds as Johan Nye comes into the pits. It is a 2:01.172. And then still got a bit of time, but Waltman's not eating too much of time now, because I'm sure Mendonca was taking a little easy, but now he's going just a little bit harder to try and keep in second place.
Yeah, he's having to push at the moment, is David Mendonca. But can I turn around and look at that 141 and ask if that is Johan Nye, the racing guy?
Oh, that's a good one. I like that one.
And so in sixth position for Mark Schnell 1, or Mark Schnell 1, sometimes as it is also called, using the anglicised version of the German naming system, which is there in play for the Dutch driver that is out there and looking to push in the 1-4-1. 4 laps down on overall leaders, and in terms of class leader, 3 laps down in that regard. So Johan just looking to try and prioritise the finish first and foremost, and in any endurance race, finding the checkered flag sometimes is one of the most important goals that you are going to have over the course of a race.
And of course, after these 8 minutes are up, I'm sure each and every one of these drivers who are still running at the end of this race are going to take a huge sigh of relief, because you only have 2 cars that are out there. Matrix Silver tried to get back out, and of course they just had to take another tow back to the pit, so unfortunately it might be race over for the 29. You also have Rex Jariwala, who is into the pits with Stallions Double R in the 7. Rob Neville coming into the pit, so he couldn't make it the whole way through. We'll see if Eskridge can, and Steve Komat still has that black flag looming in his Missile Motors number 210, and I have a feeling that if he does not answer that call, it will be a harder hammer that will drop on the driver and the team. But we'll see what happens here in the next couple of minutes, next couple of laps. 18 left to go in this race. We've seen some crazier things happen at the end of these nighttime races around Sebring, but hopefully, knock on wood, that we won't see those happen.
No, we have seen late dramas here before, and actually in history, late drama is almost part and parcel of what makes the Sebring 12-hour so important. And just speaking as we're coming up onto that weekend, I know for a fact that David Hindhoff has actually taken his plane over to Sebring today to get himself ready to go and commentate some of the most amazing racing action in the world. But Sebring is a 12-hour endurance event. It's one of those that over the last 15 to 20 years, I think it's turned into the classic that everyone knows and loves, and that maybe wasn't as much when it was run in the 80s and 90s.
I know our friend Arjuna Kankapati is on the road right now to go down to Sebring. And I agree. We've seen some strange things here in the final couple of minutes of the 12-hour that make you scratch your head and go, how did that happen? As Henson trying to hold off Chris Braun once again for position. And this is not only for overall, but it's in the pro class in GT3R, which is a massive class that saw 12 cars already score points in the first round. So it just goes to show how talented this GT3R pro class is up and down the field. Of course, Greg Strelzoff, your highest running club racer right now in the GT3R class. But Sebring, much like several of the other very famous and very prestigious racetracks, likes to pick its winners. And so far, she's been playing nice over these past several hours. Hopefully she plays nice over the next 5.5 minutes.
Yeah, Rob Neville needs a splash and dash again by the looks of it to go and get that home. So put only about 5 seconds worth of stop into play before then getting the opportunity to go out then and show what that is all about. So we'll now hit the box. We'll look to get that service as Chad Henson now feeling at this late stage of the race here, Jeremy, able with 5 minutes to go to wiggle a little bit. That's what we call a serpentine out there. You're trying to shake a car off and as you go through and go back, and critically only made the one movement there, which is known as his defense, and then you're allowed that movement to come back onto the racing line to take the natural corner.
That's that next move which really gets you in trouble here in sports car racing. So you can make the defense, you just cannot block in retribution to the other driver's move there. And of course, that snake move has really helped out Henson, now open up to a 0.7 of a second gap over Chris Braun for position. Trying to find where our leader is, and not too far away is the 93 of David Boyer. And of course, Kevin Orr now losing a bunch more time, 40 seconds behind your race leader. There he is right there, David Boyer, coming around Big Ben and into the hairpin. I think when he comes across the line next time by, it'll be 2 laps to go. So we're working less than 3 laps in this race that saw so many interesting storylines going in that really turned on its head as we got later and later into the race. And ladies and gentlemen, that's why we love endurance racing.
Endurance racing is the great maybe, and it's all about thought and thinking, because all of the great runs that go along over the course of a race, there are so many different areas that can change the way an endurance race can go. It's about battling the adversity out there, and I think it's one that when you look at it on paper as a kid, you're not necessarily excited because it's not always the fastest, not always the quickest, but when you get to learning and understanding it as an adult, you appreciate the technical nature of how you fight an endurance race. And that's why I think it is so critical that endurance racing is seeing an absolute boom out there compared to what we have seen in eras gone by. 2:53 left on the clock then for David Boyer and Kynaran Racing Blau, and they will know that they are just 2 laps away from finding themselves with victory here, so long as they do not have a race-ending incident in the final couple of stages.
And of course, that can always happen at some point, but Boyer running the race as smooth as he can. He doesn't need to push or make any sort of troubles. Yeah, it'll be white flag next time by for the leader and the rest of the field, as David Boyer trying to go 2 in a row so far this season, as the Kynaran Racing Blau team, the number 93, they made their way into victory lane at the Daytona International Speedway last time out. And all it takes right now is just a handful of quarters to confirm that 2 in a row and extend the points lead in the GTP Club class here for the 2026 Team Racing Series and the Porsche Club America Sim Racing Championship. Boyer really showed his own here once he got in the car and was able to not only close in on Cat 5 Racing, but really be a thorn in their side. Tried to make a couple of moves using some of the GT3R cars to make a pick, but to say the least, it was just too little too late, as you see your GT3R Pro and basically GT3R overall leader, Cameron Martineau. If you're Martineau at this point, Jake, you're thinking, boy, I got lucky from somebody else's misfortune, because now you're taking that Samantha Tan Esports number 38 up to the front by a huge margin, as Waltman's 9 seconds behind Mendonca at this time. So unless Mendonca has a major problem, it's still going to be a second, third for Solpeck and Imperial.
I'd look around at Cameron Martineau and the way that he's gone about this race, and I would argue that, yes, he has got lucky with the incident that gave them the lead, but they also put themselves in the position to put the pressure on to have to take the risks for Solpeck Precision Racing. So I'd argue, yeah, there's an element of luck, but there's also an element of skill that's got them to the position that they have done at the front of this field here on RaceSpotTV. Your final lap has started by Kynaran Racing Blau, who have already found themselves now under the bridge and in towards the right-hander of the hotel hairpin, and will be looking now at just getting to the checkered flag with as little worry as possible. George Janellis there of Chroma Motorsport Black moving out of the way, as Martineau now will be taking the run along the main stretch to start his final laps worth of running. The GTP field has strung itself out quite nicely, but the race was defined in the early stages by Cat 5 Racing GTP, who pulled themselves out to a really strong gap at the front of the field. Critically, it was a penalty on pit exit that was able to cost them the start of running, and it was a drive-through that they had to get through for what the issue was. Then came the issue of fighting on pit lane at the final stops, and that wasn't good enough when you speed on pit entry as well. So when all of it is down to the speed of the gun, it's now just the case of control the controllables, round yourself through Sunset Bend. Kynarin Racing Blau are going to come to the line, and they will take the victory here in overall and in GTP with an absolutely stellar drive.
And talk about a masterclass out of the 93. They were able to divide themselves around when they were behind. As you're taking a look at the GT3R, we're waiting for Samantha Tanner Racing Esports and Cameron Martineau to come across the line and take that checker flag. And he's on the backside of the circuit now. All he has left are the Ullman Straight and Sunset Bend. As we've mentioned, this is a coming out party for Martineau as he tried to get ahead and keep David Mendonca behind him in the after the final pit stop. He wasn't able to, but he closed in and kept it within a second, which that led him to get around Mendonca when Mendonca ran into his problems. And look at this, opened up a 35-second gap between he and Mendonca around Sunset Bend. Have a day, Cameron Martineau and Samantha Tan Racing Esports. Checker flag is out. Overall GT3R and GT3R Pro winners here at Sebring.
It's a big, strong result for Samantha Tan Racing Esports. They will be on the back foot for the championship, having missed the opening round. So you would say they are stage hunting and got exactly what they were looking for here at the season opener. So some wonderful results that have flown across then in today's running. So let's take this opportunity here as the final cars will make their way over towards the line. JR Gregory here for Last 10th Racing. Good on you, buddy. Is going to get over the line. There's David Mendonca who was there behind, and it was a close chase by Imperial Motorsports Kingfisher. They managed to get themselves only a handful of seconds behind as they came over the line. There is your winner then in category for the Challenger class out there that makes the difference, and officially all cars now over the line at Sebring. In GTP, Kynarin Racing Blau, a 50-second margin of victory over the line. They kept the pressure on Kevin Orr in Cat 5 all the way to the final pit stop, where the second of two mistakes for Cat 5 made the difference out there. Chris Costis will finish off in third, with Rob Neville and Ken Eskridge fourth and fifth, as we take a look then and see that it is Backmarker Motorsports for their category. And finally in sixth position over the line there was Mark Schnell-Ines. In terms of this race, only a couple of retirements overall, but Cameron Martineau there for Samantha Tan Racing Esports gets the job done over David Mendonca with the damage to the front late on in the race, and Jonathan Waltman, who is then third position overall. Chad Henson would be a lap down for Imperial Motorsports, with Chris Braun then in fifth, unable to get the pass done late. Greg Streltzoff will then take the club class in sixth, ahead of Matt Sedal and Julian Jones. JR Gregory for Last 10th Racing will be ninth, with Jonathan Robert rounding out the top 10, making it 4 Last 10th cars in the top 10. Chris Sherburn would then have Chad Casion in 12th, and Motorsports would once again win at the sport category in 13th, with Brad Dunn and Jeremy Main for Chroma White and Team Roadrunner Hurricane behind that. 3 down for Leon Snyman and Steve Kamatz. 5 down, Caleb Tillar would see behind him Antonio Da Silva and Mark Schnell-Zwei, who would win the Challenger class then, and the final two who would not find the finish, Rex Jarawala for Stallions at Double R, and then Matrix Silver over Mike Patterson then with the damage that had been found. This will take us over to post-race coverage here on RaceSpotTV, where Jeremy Scott is going to be stood by with some drivers to go out there and have a chat with, including your winners from Kynarin, David and Charlie Boyer.
Let's talk to both drivers, and we'll start off with David Boyer. David, first of all, did you expect there at the end for that mishap with Kevin Orr going into the pits on that final pit stop?
I definitely did not expect it, but boy, for my nerves, am I glad that it made it a little bit easier on us, because I was actually literally calling my girlfriend over. I'm like, this is going to be a crazy end of the race, so you want to come watch this.
Charlie, it's got to feel good. 2 in a row so far this year with winning at Daytona and winning here at Sebring. You basically sweep the Florida 1-2.
Yeah, Florida's been really good to us. We struggled early in that race. Our setup was not great for the hot conditions, but once it cooled down, things settled down for us, and it turned out to work out pretty well.
And let's talk about that a little bit, David. Of course, once it cooled down, that's when you really started getting racy with Cat 5 Racing. I thought for a couple seconds that you and Kevin, or Charlie and Kevin also would have been able to make that pass near the end, but obviously it was all for naught. Did you notice a change the quicker that we got into the darkness?
For sure. I mean, we had a couple tweaks too setup-wise, but I don't know how obvious it was on the broadcast, but I was majorly struggling in the heat with the car was understeering, and then it would just quickly turn into oversteer. It was really tough, but once it cooled down, everything became a bit faster. I gained a ton of confidence, and I think things played out pretty well.
It really seemed like it, especially because you'd get close and then move away a little bit. But either way, Charlie, next race out, it's the Grand Prix layout of Watkins Glen on June 14th. Let's talk a little bit about preparation and how you get ready for such a historic venue after coming from another historic venue.
I have more real-life race days at Watkins Glen than any other track, so I'm looking forward to the Glen a lot. I think we got to spend more time on our setup, though, because we really almost hurt ourselves on the setup for Sebring. Probably focused a little too much on qualifying, not enough for race pace. So we're looking forward to it. We're, it's going to be great. We love the Glen.
Well, gents, congratulations. Another great win propels you to an even bigger points lead in the GTP Club Championship. Charlie Boyer, David Boyer, your winners in Kieran Racing Blau.
Thanks, Jeremy.
Thank you, guys.
And let's move over to Ramiro. I'm going to let you pick who we go to next, because there's a lot of great storylines in and of this race. Actually, yeah, let's bring in Tyler Campbell of the Samantha Tan Racing Esports, as he absolutely dominated right there near the end. Tyler, we were talking about in the broadcast. Tyler Campbell and teammate Cameron Martineau. We're talking about, let's bring Cameron in actually as well, because this is concerning him. Cameron, we said that this race for you was an absolute coming out party for you in Samantha Tan Racing. How out of your mind did you have to drive on that final stint after coming out of the pits?
Oh, it was a lot of pressure. We were Tyler and I were celebrating when we got out of the pits there, and we saw, we were ahead of David, so we knew we were in there for a shot, and it was just, we wanted to just be in the right place at the right time, and then just run consistent laps and see where we end up. So I think we played a perfect strategy to set ourselves up for that final stint to be in for a win, and we were just in the right place at the right time, and that was so much fun. I mean, we're so stoked for this result and this win. I mean, Tyler drove phenomenally to set us up for this win.
And let's talk about that, Tyler. We know how good Solpeck is with Mendonca and Prescott, both very fast drivers, and you really kept the team in play there during your stints. When you handed it off to Cameron, did you expect everything to play out the way it did?
Yeah, I mean, we were keeping close tabs on it, for sure. Ultimately, going into it, we knew that David was super rapid, and we just tried to play it safe, and we were playing the strategy game, just focusing on trying to capitalize on getting a second place. And then when I came out of the pits after getting the car back from Cameron, and we realized we had some pace, the strategy kind of shifted, and we, moved to just pushing, trying to apply pressure and cut down the gap as much as we could. And it ended up working out in our favor, to where we were able to get them in a position to feel the need to swap drivers. Talking in the chat already, Robbie was talking about how he was struggling on pace, and so I think that just kind of put them in a unique mental position to allow us to capitalize on when they got unfortunately caught up with a spun car. It was forcing them to push hard, and that allowed us to be in a place to just capitalize on the the unfortunate mishaps that kind of happens with multi-class racing and racing for enduros, right? It's all part of the game. But as Cameron said, we both were just trying to make smart calls and just play that strategy game to make the most of what we had. So real happy to have started 6th and come out with the win. Definitely got a little lucky, but that's racing. Playing your cards right.
Hey, Cameron, let's talk about that final pass. Obviously, it was a pass because of unfortunate circumstances with Solpec. But for you, knowing what it's like racing against Solpec, what were your thoughts going, okay, well, I just passed not only one of the best drivers in iRacing, but I also passed one of the best teams in iRacing for the lead in GT3R?
Yeah, I mean, at that point, it was just head down, drive smart, just click off laps. Tyler was doing a great job of keeping me informed about the gap, and we were watching fuel, and we just at that point it was okay, we're here, we have pace, and let's just drive smart and make sure that we hold on to this and keep it in our control. So that was really the mindset once we saw that we were in a good position to close it out.
And of course, Tyler, this was an absolute fantastic race for both you drivers. And we noted the broadcast at Samantha Tan Racing Esports absolutely coming up and really showing themselves over the past couple of seasons since Samantha brought this esports team together. What are your thoughts after having such a fantastic, and we will say now, dominating win, 37 seconds after the incident with Mendonca?
Really happy to be a part of the program. Cameron leading up the program for the last couple years has been, a great leader for the team, and just really excited for the opportunity to come race and represent such an awesome brand. It's a lot of fun racing with these guys. And Cameron and I met actually last winter at PRI out in Indianapolis. So it was just kind of cool to get a face to face, and as I said, just real happy and real lucky to be an extension of Samantha's brand.
Hey, note to self, get out to PRI. You get to meet some of your best sim racers. Cameron, Tyler, congratulations, and hopefully we'll see you next time out at Watkins Glen.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Really appreciate it.
And of course, that was your GT3R overall and your pro winner. Let's bring in your GT3R club winners in Greg Strothoff and Jake Gerbino. First of all, congratulations. I know, Jake, it was tough sitting back there and trying to hold off some of the other drivers, but let's talk about your final stint there.
Yeah, Greg did an awesome job in the final stint, if that's what you're referring to. My first 2 stints went fairly well, pretty uneventful. Couldn't quite keep the same pace with the leading guys up front, but we had a nice margin to P2 in class. So overall, really great job on both of our parts. Kept it clean, and really proud of the team.
Let's talk to Greg. All the broadcasts I've done with you, no surprise to see you at the front. And of course, the middle of the pack, we highlighted a couple of your battles there as well near the end of the race, and it had to be tough to hold everybody back there.
Hey, first of all, I want to thank Jake for doing such a great job. Really appreciate his great teamwork. And yeah, it was there was a time where I had Matt and a few others, and it was just about hitting the marks and staying consistent, and not getting overwhelmed by the curse of the broadcast booth. The broadcast booth has cursed me, and I determined that I would not have any issues today.
Wow, thanks, Greg. I appreciate that. But nonetheless, it was a great showing from you right now. And of course, let's take a look at the future. Jake, you've got Watkins Glen coming up on June 14th. It's the full Grand Prix layout. How excited are you to, A, have a good break, but B, go to yet another classic road course for the Team Racing Series?
Yeah, Watkins Glen is excellent. We're really looking forward to that one. It's actually not too far from where I live, a couple hours away, local track. Just one of the greatest in the Northeast and in the country overall. So looking forward to seeing all that blue Armco soon. not making contact with it, but it's a great venue to drive around. Fast track, legendary track. Really looking forward to it, and looking forward to driving with Greg again, as always.
And Greg, of course, we see you regularly on our Wednesday shows here on RaceSpotTV, running the Sprint Championship. Got a couple more races coming up as well for that.
Yeah, I'm very excited. First of all, I love Watkins Glen. I have special memories there. I won my first Skip Barber race there, and I just love that track so much. Too bad we're not going there in real life. There's some great places to eat around there. But, and I'm just joking about the broadcast booth curse. I've unfortunately had some bad luck. But you guys have been covering me really well. I love the Long Beach coverage. That was really great. And, I'm really excited for Suzuka. I like the challenge of racing in the rain. And I'm excited to have you guys call it. So thank you, Jeremy, very much.
Greg, it never rains in Japan. What are you saying there? That's our RSP Black winners in GT3 as I take a look at my club. Greg Strelzoff and Jake Urbino. Congratulations, gents. We'll see you down the road.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we'll hand it off to our GT3 Sport winners. We've got Joe Evers and Sheldon Zarachuk, correct? Did I get that right?
Zaharachuk, yes, that's right.
Zaharachuk. All right. Well, first of all, congratulations, gents. Let's talk a little about your race. We'll start with Sheldon, as he was the first one in the room. Obviously, a interesting race, to say the least, from your point of view. Tell us your thoughts.
Well, it was. We did some fuel conservation to thinking we were going to need it. It turned out we didn't, but we just held our position well, and we put ourselves in a spot to basically go after Brad at the end.
And, of course, Joe, what's it like to know, okay, well, I saved all this fuel, but I really didn't have to, so now all I have to do is just get out there and run my race?
That's a good question. I didn't realize it until we switched drivers at the end, and so I told Sheldon just go for it because we saved more than enough.
That's half the battle. Winners at Daytona, winners here at Sebring. You've got 3 more chances to make it a clean sweep this season. Sheldon, how difficult is it going to be to try and essentially run the table?
Well, I think we've got a good chance. We've been strong as a team, and our strengths and weaknesses haven't hurt us any and helped us out in a lot of places. So I think that we've got a good team going.
And of course, we'll leave this last question to Joe. Watkins Glen, in just a couple of weeks. A couple of drivers we talked to who said, when we asked them about Watkins Glen, they're like, yeah, I love Watkins Glen. I've raced there. I can't wait. What are your thoughts going into the weekend?
I definitely like Watkins. I don't think I'm the fastest there, so I think it's going to be challenging. And I'm really hoping that we get some more sport teams out so we can have some races, some battles.
So if you're watching this and you're eligible for the sport class, definitely make sure you sign up to make Motorsports happy. Of course, right now they are your points leaders in GT3 R Sport, and extending that points lead by a big margin. Joe Evers, Sheldon Zarachuk, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time out.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeremy. Have a good day.
All right, I think we are awaiting our GTP challenge winners, the Lovebirds, and I definitely want to talk to them as well. But Jake, while we're waiting for them, and I think we're going to get an answer here shortly on whether or not they're going to be here, the big thing that I have to say is we questioned their fuel strategy. And, okay, so yeah, definitely GTP Lovebirds on their fuel strategy. It is Lisa and Ken Eskridge. They are your winners. 5th place in class, by the way, overall. They had a fantastic strategy. They only ran 2 pit stops that whole entire race.
Yeah, and that just goes to show you that you can be a little bit easier out there. It's not a done deal that this is a 3-stop race over the course of 3 hours. And it might be a little bit different, though, when they head to Watkins Glen on June 14th, which is the next round of the championship. A 2-month wait for that one with us, 12:30 p.m. Eastern, 9:30 a.m. Pacific for that racing series, or for that race to kick off then for the midway for the 2026 Team Racing Series here with the Porsche Club of America. But there is so much to come along with us on RaceSpotTV with some amazing racing action, which was brought to you, of course, with Jeremy Scott, myself, Jake Sperry, and, of course, Princess Cruises, who you absolutely do need to go and get a cruise booked. If you haven't done so already, you get a massive amount of help and a specific cruise if you are a Porsche Club of America member. Days of which, like today, are about how you just get luck to work your way. There is no other alternative except you make your own luck from the race. Find the pace, make the push, and get it to all happen. Samantha Tan getting a big result then for the team and winning. And so you look at Cameron Martineau, who got exactly what was necessary. But the day will belong, in my mind, to the drive up at the front. The Boyers happy as anything. 2 from 2. It's the day of Kynaran control, and they will look very happy heading up to upstate New York.